Hey, everybody. We're starting a little bit early today. This is sort of our pre-show. So welcome to the pre-show. This is the unofficial bit of the Global AI Community October sessions, where Alicia, who's to the left of me, hey, there you are, hello, is joining me today as a co-host, and I will announce her later for officially. But we were just chatting about generative design and designing big offices using AI, actually. And that came from the fact that I remodeled my bathroom and shower a few weeks ago, and that was like major work. But I guess if you want to design a big office with 40 floors and you have to optimize for either conferencing or working alone or working in a team, that's a job that's normally taking months. Alicia, do you know actually how much time normally would take?
Oh,
Have you met anybody who's working in construction for that matter?
I haven't, but I can only imagine how much time and manpower you save by doing that design upfront, design and possible redesign before construction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I guess if you could apply AI and generate a floor plan for a building, and it doesn't matter, it could be a house, but especially larger buildings, that makes sense, I guess.
Uh,
Yeah,
It's kind
we've
of
seen.
interesting if you could design for happiness, so employee happiness, right? So I wonder what the ratio is between employee happiness, and I think there is a correlation between that and Windows, right? So I've noticed a lot of European buildings have a lot more um, Windows space
Yeah,
than in the
definitely.
States. So there's math behind it. And if there's math behind it, you can pipe that into an AI algorithm, right?
Yeah, I guess we could maybe use the amount of light coming into a particular floor as a part of a loss function, I guess, for a neural network or something. If that
Right.
makes sense, and
Well,
that
it
might
would
be other
be
factors.
surface area, right?
Yeah,
For the windows. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Number of working places you can put on the floor could also be a component in the model. And I guess if you feed that to a computer and you just try to maximize the number of points the computer gets for the best floor plan, you could actually learn how to generate a correct floor plan for a building.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I'm from Las Vegas, and there's not a lot of windows in Las Vegas. So I don't know what that says about, employee job satisfaction, but being in IT, I'm now in Texas. So I'm just saying.
How are the buildings in Texas, by the way?
Texas is so spread out that there are a lot of windows and there are a lot of trees. So I think if I could also add a metric for proximity to nature elements, right? Proximity and exposure. And if you look at job satisfaction between, employees on the West Coast, right? Everybody loves California and Seattle, and
It's
there's
sunny.
a lot of trees there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, a lot of greenery. And in San Francisco, well, of course, you've got more sun than in Seattle, but Seattle has this nice environment as well with the mountains close by. Um, yeah, I guess those are the more favorite places. I think, however, there's also a large correlation to the fact that large IT companies happen to come from those places. So Microsoft is, of course, from Redmond, which is close to Seattle. Amazon is also based in Seattle. I never knew until I came there and I saw Amazon office
Uh-huh.
uh, in the middle of Seattle, and also noticed that people were talking about the housing prices that were driven up by Microsoft and Amazon, apparently, which is a real problem for those cities. Um, the same thing's happening in San Francisco, so I guess that Texas is not a bad place to be in
Yeah,
that sense.
it's so next, I think we need some studies about the correlation between beaches, because I think I need to spend a lot of time thinking about how much better I perform when I'm closer to a beach.
And of
And
course, you have to check that manually. You have to go to the
right,
beach and make
I
measurements
think so.
yourself, of course.
Yeah, and I would not mind spending 14 days in quarantine in Hawaii while I perform that analysis. And for those of you who don't know, I'm originally from Hawaii. So occasionally I do get to go back to see my family, and there's no place like home. Uh, so I'm sure there's a lot of beaches that I've yet to discover in Europe. So it's
I can recommend a few. So in the Netherlands, we have sand beaches, although we don't have a lot of days during the year where it's sunny enough to sit on the beach and sit comfortably on the beach. It's pretty busy as well. Small country, a lot of people, so that happens. But actually, there's a part of the Netherlands. I don't know if it's officially part of the Netherlands anymore. Curacao. So we've got a couple of islands in the Caribbean that are pretty nice. I've been there a couple of times, and that's also part of the Netherlands in some form or shape. It's pretty complicated, but yeah, those are great places to go to.
So where is your downtown located relative to your beach? Like,
I have to drive 1 hour and 45 minutes to get to a beach from my place. Well,
and how happy are you?
Very happy.
I know you're a very happy guy, Willem.
yeah. I'm just excited about this episode, and I'm excited about AI and new technology in general. So I'm one of those people that likes to sit indoor and work on new stuff. Basically, that's what I do for a living. Yeah, that's pretty cool, actually. And I'm excited for tonight as well. So we in preparation for this episode, I got a chance to talk to Satya Malik, the CEO of OpenCV, which is a great person to have a chat with. He's pretty. I mean, he runs this open source company, OpenCV, for the last 20 years. It's pretty old, actually, that technology, and it's kept up to date and improved over and over again. And they've been doing some great stuff. He's going to talk about that later in the episode as well. And just in general, I feel that it's a privilege to be able to talk to those kind of people. They're pretty busy. Usually you only get 30 minutes to prepare, and I got a chance to talk much longer to him. So that's pretty special, I have to say. Yeah.
Well, it's really great, everything that you and all the other team members for the global AI community do to help bring this content to the community. And that's what really gets me pumped up and excited about the global AI community is getting access to all of this technologies and all of these speakers. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm just happy to help out. For me, it's important to help people learn more about AI. The whole AI field is pretty new, actually. I know it's been around since the 50s. Richard talked about this that last week, and but I feel as if it's only been big in the last 10 years, maybe. It's been growing tremendously, and there's a lot more people working on AI technology than ever before. And I feel this is the moment in time where we should actually teach people more about it and make it more accessible, both on technological side where people learn about what you can do with AI. And on the other hand, there's of course the whole responsible AI aspect that's also growing and becoming more important actually for people to use, because you can build anything you want, but it has to be safe. I mean, that's where responsible AI comes in, and that's great. And we play a large role in that, I believe, as a global AI community. We can help each other wherever you are. If you're sitting at home, working from home, or going to the office because there's no other way to earn money, we're still here to help you learn more about AI. And thankfully, I don't have to do that all alone. I can do that with a lot of people around me, such as you, Alicia, but also Eve, Sammy, Dawood. Where people have seen all of you at some point in time on the stream. Yeah, that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the community. I have been working in AI for not as long as you've been working in AI, and I think the community is really what has helped me to get up to speed so quickly. And I think it's great that everybody is so ready and willing to share information and knowledge. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, There's a lot of people that have the same backstory as you. Actually, they just recently started, and I've been around a bit longer, 8 years now, which is not an awful long time if you ask me. There's still so many things I don't know about, and I'm learning every day from the community actually as well. Uh, I mean, just recently we had a talk on Global AI Talks, the show that Sammy runs, from a guy who developed again a general adversarial network to mix portraits of two people together to form a new portrait. That's kind of cool too. Yeah. So while we're waiting for the first guest to arrive, we seem to have lost him in another Teams call. And that's funny how that goes in online meetings and online shows for that matter. I guess he's in the test call. Welcome everybody to the Global AI show, Global AI October sessions, I must say, in this second episode already. I'm really happy you're here, watching from Facebook, from Twitter, from YouTube, from our website. Last time we had over 10,000 people watching, Alicia.
Wow.
So we've set a bar for ourselves to reach that again, I guess. And I've had tremendous feedback from everybody. It actually blew me away. And this is not a sort of Trump saying, so to say. He does that a lot. It's amazing. It's super awesome. But I'm actually blown away. I didn't expect that to happen at all. I don't know about you, actually.
Well, I wasn't surprised. I saw the change format, and I saw the amount of time and effort everybody put into making the show more interactive. And I know the topics and your speakers were just amazing. So congratulations. And watching the show, I had a lot of fun watching.
Cool. Yeah, a lot of people from the crew have been watching as well, and people should know that we have actually a couple of our friends from the community helping us out today with moderating the chat. So if you have questions for us, feel free to ask them. They will forward them to Alicia and me through our back channel. We are using Slack actually as a tool for that to get in. So sometimes you will see me watching to the left, your right. Checking what's going on behind the scenes for us. But we'll definitely get your questions. And what's interesting, actually, we're going to give away another $50 gift card today, Alicia, for the person that has the most interesting question for us. Last time we asked people to take pictures, but we've got a different plan for that. We'll tell you about it. This time, if you have questions, please feel free to ask us. We'll make sure that the speaker knows about them, or we will answer them if that's at all possible. So that's cool. And we've got more stuff to give away, right?
I think we have one more thing. So,
what is it?
thank you to the Global AI community for sponsoring an Oculus headset.
Oh
so
man.
What we would like to do is, one of the reasons that I enjoy the Global AI community so much is because we're a community. And I really miss seeing everybody at the events and making new friends and connecting with new people and sharing experiences and, connecting and growing together. So my call to action is I'd like you all to help me with a photo challenge. So take a selfie of yourself watching the October session with us today and post it on Twitter and hashtag Global AI Community. And let's all say hi to each other and get to know the rest of our community. And we'll go ahead and post a couple of reminders throughout the show, and maybe about an hour or two after the event, we'll go ahead and scroll through and pick a winner. But if you could participate, this is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm dying to connect with y'all and to get to know the rest of our community. So thank you.
Cool. That's actually a pretty amazing device, and What's even more funny, we've got 2 community demos today. One talking about augmented reality using HoloLens and
Hello.
AI. Hey, Satya is here. That's cool. And the other demo that we have is about virtual reality. So if you win, you can immediately start to use AI on this apparatus. So that's kind of cool. I like that you're doing this for the community, Alicia. And with that, I would like to introduce Satya. Hey, Satya, how are you doing?
I'm good. Somehow the link was not working. I kept waiting. Sorry about that. I was 15 minutes early, but still, I thought that it would just let me in. Yeah, then I think they sent a new link and that seems to work.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Hank is amazing like that. Hank is our director, producer, sound guy, cable guy extraordinaire in the background. He's actually clicking together all the video streams that we have tonight, and it's happening from my home actually. I've got a sick kid at home, and the Netherlands is actually in a partial lockdown at the moment, so I can't go out the door when one of my kids is sick. So this is from my attic, from my home office. And where are you located at the moment, Satya?
San Diego, California.
Nice. Also working from home?
Well, I have I have an office which is like 5 minutes from home. So yeah, it's almost like home.
It feels like home sometimes.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome to have you. So for those who don't know Satya, could you introduce yourself to the community?
Sure. So I am the CEO of OpenCV.org. It is the foundation that actually maintains the OpenCV library. And as most people probably know, that OpenCV is the largest computer vision library in the world, and for traditional computer vision algorithms. And I'm also the CEO of OpenCV.ai, which is the for-profit arm for OpenCV.
Sounds awesome. And how long have you actually been working with OpenCV?
For a little over a year. I joined as the CEO of OpenCV a little over a year. Dr. Gary Bradsky, who's the founder of OpenCV, he asked me to join, and then we decided. It took a few years. The first time he asked me, I was not ready because things were going on. And last year I decided, yes, I have a clear vision now on where the foundation should go. Cool.
Oh, that sounds really awesome. So I know for a fact that OpenCV has been around for 20 years.
Yep.
That's a really long time in software land. And I can imagine that there's a lot of new stuff that you can talk about. So whenever you're ready, feel free to share your screen and show us your awesome keynote.
Sure. So just before I share that, OpenCV library, like in the keynote, I'm going to talk about how OpenCV has grown beyond the OpenCV library. And one of the main thing today would be OpenCV AI Kit. That's what I'm going to talk about and show what you can do with it.
Cool.
So let's, okay. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so the talk is about OpenCV AI Kit. Now, just to get you guys all excited about this talk, I want to first talk about our amazing Kickstarter campaign. So to launch this OpenCV AI Kit, which is essentially a smart camera, which can do depth estimation as well. We launched a Kickstarter campaign a few months earlier, and it was the biggest Kickstarter campaign in the history of smart cameras. So this we raised $1.35 million with the help of 6,500 backers. So we have a very strong community that is helping us with this camera. So with that, now you would be curious to know what is so special about the smart camera. Why did so many people get excited about this camera? And that is what this talk is about. So until now, we have thought about OpenCV as the library. Whenever you talk about OpenCV, it is always about the OpenCV library. But now we are growing beyond the library. Now we have an ecosystem of things. We think of OpenCV as a brand, and we want to serve the community by providing various services. Library is still the key thing we do, but we also provide courses, we provide hardware, software, we provide community support, and very soon we will also launch a store where people will be able to buy computer vision hardware, software, and services. So we want OpenCV brand to include anything. If you think about any resources you need for computer vision for your project or for your company, you should think about the OpenCV brand. That's where we are moving things. So now that brings us to OpenCV AI Kit. It is a family of edge computing solution, edge AI solutions. And we'll see in a little bit what that means. Edge AI is basically the opposite of cloud AI. In the cloud, we can have GPUs and we can have all the processing power we need. There are no power constraints usually. So we can deploy this very heavy duty solutions which work very well, but they require this cloud resource and they require connectivity. So the other option is to go and do all these things on the edge, on the device where the picture is being taken, not upload anything to the cloud. So why would you do edge AI? The first thing is speed. In a lot of applications, for example, if you're doing sports analytics, things are moving so fast that you have no option but to do the analysis on the device in real time. The second thing is that even though 5G is very hot these days, connectivity is still a very big problem in a lot of places, especially connectivity which can help you upload videos and get them back in good real time. So we need to do this processing on the edge. And then we have privacy concerns also. Imagine that you have a Roomba which is using a camera. You don't want that picture to go out and be processed on the cloud. It is sometimes okay that that camera is processing on the device and you're guaranteed that the images are not going out. So there is a privacy concern because of which people may want to do the processing on the device itself. And finally, it's the cost. It is hugely expensive to do the processing on the cloud. People know, what is the cost of AWS. It starts out easy and then it blows up very quickly. So there are several challenges in deploying an edge solution. First of all, we are resource constrained. The memory as well as the processing is often constrained. The electrical power consumption is often constrained as well. Some of these devices could be running on batteries and we don't then want to drain out the batteries. And finally, the form factor is crucial. They have to be small. So we started out with a mission to democratize edge AI the way Raspberry Pi democratized edge computing. That's a very big goal given the popularity of Raspberry Pi. But I think that with Oak, we have taken a step in the right direction. We have come up with two versions of OpenCV AI Kit. The first one is called Oak One. It is a smart camera which can do neural computing on the device. And the second one is called Oak D, D for depth. It can do everything that Oak One can do, but also depth estimation. So let's look into Oak One. What can it do? It's tiny, it's powerful. If you look at existing solutions on how people today use neural accelerators in their solution, this is a standard configuration. You have a camera that is connected to a host like a Raspberry Pi, and you have an AI processor plugged in like a Movidius neural compute stick. The problem with this approach is that the camera records the frame and then it moves into the Raspberry Pi and then that frame goes into the neural compute stick. So the path is pretty long, and when you're trying to do something at 60 frames a second, it becomes very difficult to maintain sync. For example, with this configuration, if you run tiny YOLO, you will probably get about 8 frames a second. So what we did was we combined the 4K camera and the AI processor into a single unit, which we call Oak One. And object detection on Oak One is 8 times faster than the configuration that I showed here. Even though the processor inside Movidius is exactly the same as the processor inside Oak One, but we get 8x speed up. A part of it is our software stack also, but a big part is that this is not the right configuration we should be working on. The camera should be connected to the neural compute stick or to the processor through a very very good connection, very fast connection. The other thing we wanted to have with Oak One is that it has to be tiny, and you can see as compared to a quarter, what is the size of this? It's really tiny. It is smaller than a AA battery, so the height is smaller than a AA battery. So it's some amazing product for an edge device. Now let's go on to OAK-D. And OAK-D is inspired by human vision because if you look at how our eyes work, they have 2 functions. The first thing is they tell us what's in the scene, what are we looking at? And the second one is how far is it from? It also does depth perception, and that's why we have stereo vision. And that was the whole objective of OAK-D. So OAK-D consists of a 4K camera, a high resolution camera, a depth camera. So there are 2 cameras which serve as the stereo pair, and we have the AI processor. If you combine all these things, if you look at the cost itself, first, forget about synchronizing the frames, which is in itself a big problem when you use a configuration like this. But the cost itself is so big compared to Oak. It is one compact solution that we have come up with. So when I say, you can do neural inference on any of these devices, Oak One and Oak-D, these are the kinds of things you can do. You can run any object detector, which is supported by OpenVINO. For example, MobileNet, SSD V2, Tiny YOLO, etc. And these models will come prepackaged with the Oak solution. And I'll show a little video where you'll see how easy it is to get started once you have the device in your hand. You can also do face detection. Our devices will ship with these models where you can do a lot of face applications like face detection, facial landmark detection, expression estimation, age estimation, pose estimation, etc. So we not only support the hardware, it's not just, oh, take this hardware and figure out how to do it. We also help you build applications using prepackaged models. Another one is vehicle detection and also license plate detector. So all of these models will come prepackaged. You don't have to do anything. You plug in the device and it is ready to go. Here's another example of pedestrian detection. Also comes with the device. Text detection. Now, if you combine neural inference with depth, it starts mimicking human vision. Now, let's see an example of how it works. In this example, you're looking at neural inference plus depth perception. The output you're looking at is a depth map. Blue means things are farther away, and yellow or red means things are closer. So you can see that we are not only saying what this object is. I'm not sure whether it is very clearly visible, but this object has been identified as a chair, and this person has been identified as a person. But not only that, we are also saying that this chair is 3 meters away. So it's pretty much mimics human vision. Now, given this capability, all neural inference tasks, they get an extra dimension. We are literally adding a new dimension to the solution space. For example, pose estimation. Pose estimation is interesting. It tells you where some of the body parts are located. But when you combine it with depth estimate, we get 3D pose estimation. We know, where the eyes, nose are located in 3D. So it becomes a very powerful device. Similarly, if you look at the problem of semantic segmentation, semantic segmentation means that you are trying to find all pixels that belong to an object. So here, all the orange pixels belong to the chair, all the pink pixels belong to the sofa, and all the green pixels belong to the television. Now, the question is, with depth information, the quality of semantic segmentation goes high up, because whenever there is ambiguity, you can resolve it using the depth estimate. You can know that the chair cannot be so long. And so you can resolve ambiguities using depth, and it can give a very high quality solution. But you can be very creative also. Now, I told you that there is a camera, there is an RGB camera on which we do neural inference, and then we have the depth camera on which we estimate depth. But we have configured Oak so that you can actually run neural networks on the 2 stereo cameras as well. So you can run a neural network on the left camera and the right camera at the same time in real time, and then combine the information to do stereo neural inference. For example, you can detect face in both the 2 frames coming from the left and the right camera, and then do the triangulation to figure out where the face is, what the depth of the face is. Now, this is interesting because some objects, like very shiny objects, they don't do very well with stereo algorithms, right? But you can still detect them using a neural network, and then you get approximate depth information. It's not very accurate, but it is approximate, and that may be sufficient for your task. So you can see in this example, we are running a neural network on 2 frames, one coming from the left camera and one coming from the right camera at the same time, and it's at 30 frames a second. If you look very carefully, we are also detecting facial landmarks in addition to the face itself. And all this is happening at 30 frames a second. So it's a very powerful device. Now, I've been focusing on the capabilities of Oak, the 2 capabilities of Oak, which is neural inference and depth perception. But the power actually lies in all the other things, which are not as cool to talk about. But when you're building an application, there are so many things that this device does on the device. For example, if you're working with 4K cameras, you can encode the 4K video on the device itself. So that's great. If you're using a robotic application, you can detect April tags. And this is being done on the device. Your host, like the Raspberry Pi, is never being used at all. And similarly, you can do feature tracking, and you can warp or de-warp images that are coming out of the camera. And so the capabilities of Oak are far beyond what most smart cameras are able to do. And this is possible because of the architecture we have chosen. So let's go over what the architecture looks like. Inside Oak, the brain of Oak is Intel's Myriad X chip. And this chip is so powerful, it can do 4 trillion operations per second. And it has built-in capability for accelerating stereo, as well as warping, dewarping, April tags, etc. We have been able to implement all those things on this device so that things are hardware accelerated. So I'm sometimes surprised, it almost feels like we are living in the future. This is, if you look at this device, it is this is the tip of a pencil, and this is such a tiny, powerful device. Our cameras, these are 12 megapixel cameras on both versions of Oak, and they can run at a maximum speed of 60 frames a second. We also have a stereo camera, which is a slightly lower resolution at 1280 by 800, but this can run at 120 frames a second. And just to give you an idea, we have been focusing so much on the speed, how easily developers can start using this, that we created this video, how easy it is to get started. So you take the device. So I'm not sure whether you're able to hear the sound. Probably not. So, OK. So what's happening is that we just plugged in the device. We copy pasted some code. And here you go. Within 30 seconds, you have a demo app running. So you plug this device onto your computer or a Raspberry Pi, and within 30 seconds, you have a demo up and running. So that was our goal. You shouldn't be spending half a day when you get a new hardware. That's what happens these days. They're not very user-friendly. The other thing is you can obviously program it the way you like using Python, but we also built a visual compute pipeline so that if you want to build a solution without needing to code, you can build a visual pipeline using different models. So suppose you want the neural network to first do face detection. You can run the face detection first, and then you can configure this visual pipeline builder so that the next step is facial landmark detector. So it loads the facial landmark detector and does processing. And with very little or almost no coding, you will be able to use this device. And like I said, that we are not just selling a hardware, we are nurturing a community. And we want to make sure that everybody who is a beginner in AI, they are taken care of. We just don't sell you the hardware and just go away. So for that, we are giving away free courses, which will help you get started. Even if you want to build your own, let's say classifier, our course will teach you how to train your model and then optimize it and get it on the device. In addition to all the 20, we also provide 20 free models that you can use with the device. We will also have a community forum. We have a large community now. About 6,500 developers have signed up for Oak. So we will have a forum where our developers will support the community, but you can also do other community stuff, right? You can ask questions to other community members, network, etc. And finally, we are creating a model marketplace where we will put the 20 models, which will be free for the community, but it will also be for the community to, other people in the community can also upload their own models so that other people can try it out. And you don't have to download any code to get started with this model marketplace, because we will wrap all the models as a web API. So you go to a web page, you upload a picture, and you can see what the model does without having to download any code. This is like a service to the community members so that they can try out different models and see what works for them. And then they can obviously download it to their device and work with them. So the final thing is that Oak is being used by a lot of companies. Unfortunately, we don't have permission to use their names. So I'm just telling what they do. We have been certified, FCC and CE certification we have received. So it is industrial, good to go solution. There are companies who are using us for visual assistance. They are creating smart glasses for the visually impaired people. It's being used in aerial drones, and one company is using it in sub-sea drones as well. So these drones go inside the ocean. And then there are e-scooter companies, cargo handling companies, sports monitoring, smart agriculture, safety, and security. One company is using it for gun detection in schools, thank God. And then one satellite company is using it as one of its sensor as well. So the community is growing. We want new developers, but I'm also so glad to see that companies which are building industrial products are also looking at Oak as the solution. So the Oak, even though the Kickstarter campaign is over, you can actually pre-order. I have given the link here, but you can also search Kickstarter OpenCV AI Kit, and you will land on this page, and there is a pre-order button that you can use. You won't receive the cameras instantly. There is a wait time. And because of that, we are also giving it out for a heavily discounted price. These prices are not the same as Kickstarter prices, but they are not anywhere close to the retail price. So that's about it. I mean, I was 7 minutes late to the meeting, but I think I just finished 2 minutes late.
Yeah, and we had a chat at the beginning, so it's awesome. I have to say, I'm impressed.
Thank you.
By the device that you're working on, and we actually got a ton of questions from the community. So
okay, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, so I will group together a few so we have a topic to talk about. So actually, Stefano is also joining us, I believe, for a bit of a discussion about your session. So let me get started with the first question. A lot of people are wondering, how do I actually get a custom model loaded on the device? Do I have to use SSH, or how does that work?
So we have scripts which will just take the model from your drive, from your laptop, the host, and put it on the device. And we also have the pipeline builder, which you can use to specify, this is the location of the model loaded on the device. And so you can load multiple models on the device as long as the memory permits, so that you get you can chain them, run this model and then run this model as long as the memory permits. We can do that.
That sounds really awesome. And also the visual pipeline. I guess you don't need any experience in development to get going with this device.
Yeah, as long as you're familiar with computers and can run a little bit, some scripts, etc. You don't really need AI experience.
Oh, that's really cool. That's great stuff, and it's good to know for people. The other question that we have from people in the audience is, so you mentioned several standard-made models. One of them is the license plate detection. Does it actually recognize what's on the license plate, so the numbers and characters?
Yeah. So the model that we will release before the end of the year, it will not only detect the license plate, it will also detect what's inside the license plate.
And in how many countries does that work actually? Because I can imagine that it's different for.
Yeah, so it will be based on the OpenVINO model that's already out there. So I don't know exactly off the top of my head how many countries it works on.
That's actually pretty cool that you took open source models instead of rolling your own. So if people are interested in what a model can do, just go to the repository of the original model, and it will actually show you what's capable, what that model is capable of, I guess. So my question would then be, what sort of models do you run?
There are some models. Say that again. Sorry.
What sort of models can you run? Does it run, for example, Onyx models or stuff like that?
So if you have an Onyx model, you can convert it and it will run on the device. Any OpenVINO model, if you go to OpenVINO Model Zoo, any of those will work, and any Onyx model can be converted. But sometimes they come up with some custom layers with other platforms which are new. Then it will take some time. But as long as it is an Onyx format, it can be done.
That's really awesome. So Alicia, I guess you're into this whole VR thing. What do you think of this kind of device?
Well, it's kind of interesting. You talked about the size, but what about the weight? And these have to be pretty small devices. And I see all the use cases for drone usage, and I know that so I've done some knee-arm programming, and I know you need the stereo, you need 2 cameras for depth perception and for calculation when you're controlling robotics. So it's really exciting to see now what's possible with respect to controlling robotics in addition to controlling the drones with these cameras. So
yeah, the possibilities are so big. I mean, some of the applications we were not even thinking about. One of them is cargo, inside, when you're packing trucks with cargo, they want to make sure that there is nothing inside. Sometimes they want to know that state, that, oh, it is completely empty, which is very difficult to do with depth alone, right? But if you add neural compute, then it's a trivial problem to, so both those things, really people don't have both those solutions together right now. They have either a depth solution, and it works great whenever depth is sufficient, or they have a neural inference solution, which is also great, but really there is no solution which combines both of them together in one nice package.
And it's nice indeed. It's very small also.
Yeah. So small, and the weight is not very much. Unfortunately, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it's really lightweight. I mean, almost like a Raspberry Pi. Yeah, that would be the weight. If you hold a Raspberry Pi, this is about the same. And we also came up with an aluminum package. The new version, as part of the Kickstarter campaign, we promised that we will produce a packaging around it. And the aluminum actually serves as the heat sink as well. So it further reduces the size because the heat sink was the big part of the solution.
But, next thing you know, we're going to be able to teach our drones how to play catch, right? Because now they have the stereo vision and they can do those things.
Yeah, right? It's really interesting. It's surprising how small these devices are becoming. So Stefano is one of the people that's actually been using the HoloLens, and maybe I can ask you a question, Stefano. What is actually the importance of these hardware devices that we've been talking about, like the Oak device, the specialized chips?
Yes, hi everybody. And well, first of all, thanks for hosting me. It's a great pleasure to be here and to hear from Sadi about these amazing devices. I'm very fan of combining hardware and the power of cloud and edge for artificial intelligence. So you ask about HoloLens, and I must say, despite being a big Microsoft fan, HoloLens is, yes, a great device, but it comes with a weight. It's not that lightweight. So you need to wear it for a long time. Not very comfortable. Doesn't have a very long battery autonomy. I will show you something during my session. It's a great device. It's not just a camera. Obviously, you can do a lot of things on augmented reality. I really welcome the development in this field. These small cameras that can be that you can wear, and they can ideally have a longer battery duration that you can last a full day.
Yeah. So you've seen a lot of developments the last few years in that department. We've seen neural networks on a chip, actually. I guess Oak is sort of similar to that, right?
Yeah. It uses Myriad-X. Myriad-X is Intel's vision processing unit, and it runs neural networks. But it also does these other things which other companies don't utilize. It, for example, has stereo capability, which it can run on the device, and things like that, which we utilized, but normally people don't. So yes, it runs neural network on this tiny chip, which is almost the size of the tip of a pencil.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff. So we've got a number of people actually coming up with solutions to build using this OpenCV camera. So I guess we will see a lot more about that soon in December, around Christmas, I guess. So just to give you a few ideas, and maybe we can have a discussion about them. There's someone asking, could I use this device not only for emotion detection, like smiling, disgust, surprise, but also for interaction between two people, hugging, affectionate responses, those kind of things, making eye contact. What do you think, Satya?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, because it is exactly that kind of thing. And hugging, I mean, it's almost opposite of what we want these days. So it's a very good application for social distancing. So when we did a competition for, spatial AI competition, which was sponsored by Intel, a lot of applicants had suggested solutions for social distancing, because it has depth perception. You can calculate the distance between people and do social distancing as well. And yes, you can use the neural inference to figure out the location of the people in the image, and then you can use depth and figure out the distance between them. So yes, those kinds of things are very much possible.
Very cool. So I guess this person will be working on his hobby project the next few months, trying to figure out how to put this together exactly. And so if you're watching, I don't know who asked the question. They don't tell me, but and if you're building this actual model for us, please come by the global AI community and show us how you did it. That's the sort of stuff that we're looking for. The fun projects in AI, especially now, given the situation around COVID. That, I mean, you can't have enough fun, I guess, during the weekend. So
I feel a challenge coming on. Do we have a AI development kit challenge that we could build into January's AI bootcamp?
Well, I'm going to look.
I think that might be fun, Willem.
I'm going to look at Satya for a few seconds and with my great puppy eyes and ask him, can we have a chat about that and maybe fix something up? Because that sounds like exactly the sort of challenge that the global AI community is capable of completing.
Actually, there is another challenge coming. So our spatial AI competition is coming to an end. There were two phases. First of all, we selected 32 people from about 235 people who had submitted the application. And those 32, they actually got the OpenCV AI kit, and they are building a solution using that. And they will submit their final solutions by October 30th, and then we will declare the winners. And Intel was so impressed with the response that we got that we are actually working on a bigger challenge with other companies involved also. I cannot talk a lot about this, but there are more challenges coming from where OpenCV AI kit would be involved.
Very, very cool. So if people are interested in that, I guess they can go to the OpenCV website and sign up for that.
One other thing I forgot to mention is that Microsoft was also very generous in supporting us with every OpenCV AI kit. The people who purchased it through the Kickstarter campaign, they also get 50 hours of free GPU time so that they can train their model and then bring it to the device through the Azure platform. So I just wanted to, thank them publicly here one more time.
That's really, really cool that they do that. Training neural networks on a CPU is not going to be fun. And not everybody has the money to buy a GPU. So I guess if you're low on budget, then and you bought this camera, that's a great addition to the package. That's really amazing.
I also like the fact that when you're doing something really good, we have always focused on AI for good, that companies come together. Intel is sponsoring the competition. Microsoft is giving free GPU hours. So all these different companies, right, they are coming together because they know that we are serving the community. And that's something that I really like. There is such a big developer community, 6,500, that it's substantial. People will come up with new ideas and make this platform really successful. So that's something I'm really excited about.
Yeah, sounds good. And so talking about AI for good, we've talked about edge devices. I guess HoloLens is the same, occasionally connected. We've got somebody wondering about privacy. So how does it help privacy-wise to have offline models?
Oh, that's a big deal. So privacy, you can actually, if you are building a solution, you can come to us and we will build a camera for you, which the firmware locks the fact it will never let an image go out of the camera, right? That can be guaranteed by in the firmware. So now you can do all the processing and only give out the meta information. For example, in case of say, let's say a gun shooting application, you don't want to send images again and again. You just want to send the metadata that, okay, there is, a shooter in the scene and they are located at this location, right? And that's enough. You don't need a very heavy network connection, and the privacy is also maintained, because most of the time, let's say in a school situation, you don't want kids' pictures to be uploaded to a cloud or anything. You just want the meta information to go out. And this works beautifully, because only when there is like a shooter situation would that information be conveyed to law enforcement, and only the location, where is the shooter located in the scene, instead of hurting the privacy of the teachers as well as the students.
Yeah. And so, Stefano, you've been working with AI a lot in your work. Do you run into these kind of privacy issues a lot in your daily work?
It is a concern, yes. I echo what Satya is saying. There is a concern of storing this information. There is a concern of detecting, because this information, this technology can be used to detect face of people, and it can be used for good purposes. Obviously, you don't know how it can be used. Now, there is a very interesting evolution of face detection, which is also a combination with sort of blockchain and digital ledger. It is a technology called photo DNA that Microsoft has developed some time ago, where you actually take an imprint of the image and create a hash value, which is a unique signature that can be used for detecting faces over time, but without actually being able to reconstruct the face, and therefore cannot be used if data leaks, cannot be used to go back to the identity of the person. So it's like you take a signature of your face that has unique landmarks and attributes, and then you store only the signature, and that signature can be used to detect that face somewhere else, but it cannot be used to rebuild the identity. So there are ways of protecting your privacy. It's all about using technology in the right way. And I love that you mentioned AI for good. It's one of the foundation of creating ethical AI, so that there are some principles, some guidelines that can be used to make sure that artificial intelligence is this big power, but used in a sensitive and human way.
Yeah, sounds really good that those devices, on the one hand, offer you ways of using less bandwidth to project results back to a server or another part of your solution, and at the same time protect your privacy. I think this is one of the major steps that we're making as a community in 2020 and beyond, thinking about how much data are we actually using to reduce the carbon footprint, and on the other hand, how do we protect users against abuse by AI? And it sounds really great that it works for OpenCV cameras and as well for the HoloLens. So I've got
also there is
go ahead.
The AI for good, the very first when we did the competition, we received so many applicants who built visual assistance devices. And one of the applicants was Mark Milencio, who was shot in the head back in the year 2003, and he lost his vision. And he now runs a company with 200 people, and he's building visual assistance device. And I was so glad that his solution required a sonar for distance measurement, but that was very heavy, and they replaced that sonar with oak, and that made my day.
Wow.
If we yeah, that was such a powerful story. It just blew me away.
Yeah, I mean, if you could replace a several pound weighing device with such a small camera, and it's a lot cheaper too. Sonar is very expensive to run.
Yeah.
So yeah, that sounds really cool. So we've got a bunch more questions from the audience, Alicia. It involves Raspberry Pis. I have to say, a lot of people are wondering. So could I connect this device up to a Raspberry Pi and build a larger solution around it? Is that possible at all?
Yeah. So this device is supposed to be connected to a host like a Raspberry Pi, and Raspberry Pi is what we expect people to be connecting it to. And one other thing I forgot to mention while I was mentioning that it is 8 times faster than if you run this thing, if you run a neural compute stick with a Raspberry Pi. In that solution, the Raspberry Pi processor is completely engaged. It goes to 100%. In our solution, even though it is 8 times faster, Raspberry Pi is not, it is at 1%, 2%. So the Raspberry Pi itself is free to be used.
So you can run other things on there, like a small HTTP service or an application that actually combines maybe several cameras together. I mean, the sky is the limit in this case. Oh,
you can also
really
combine
cool.
multiple Oak devices to the same Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Another cool question that people have. So we're giving away an Oculus Quest 2 today, and people are really into the whole VR scene and AR scene. I guess that's because we have a lot of speakers around that today as well. Stefano is going to talk about HoloLens. We've got other people talking about VR. So people are wondering, is the Oak camera powerful enough to connect it to an AR VR headset actually? Is that at all possible? I don't know. I've never worked with one before.
I don't know, actually. I don't know the answer to that. It depends on the operating system. Anything that supports OpenVINO as the host, any host that supports OpenVINO, Oak can be connected to it. So I don't know what headsets actually, support OpenVINO.
But I guess we could of course connect the Oak device to a Raspberry Pi and then use a network connection to talk to the VR headset. That works.
Yes.
Either way.
Yes.
Yeah. I will be slower, I guess. Than connecting it
no,
directly.
because you're only getting metadata out of it. You don't need to send the image. You're using the Oak camera as a sensor. You're getting metadata out of it, not really the image. If that's yeah.
That sounds really awesome.
Yeah, even on the network, it would be really fast.
Yeah, and so, and I guess this will be my. I don't know if we got more questions. We've got a ton of questions coming in, but one of the interesting things that I've seen is that so with all the VR, people are combining VR with AI a lot. What do you think? Are they essential to put together, or what's going on actually with AI and VR?
I'll give you one example where it's used in the opposite way, where AR is helping AR and VR. They are helping AI, and that's in the training process. In a lot of cases, you cannot produce enough data from real world. There could be privacy concerns, but you can simulate that data, right? Either fully, it is fully virtual, or it could be half virtual and half real kind of scenarios. The simplest application, it's not even VR, but a simplest application would be text recognition. So we did a project where we did text recognition on ID cards. And obviously, we did not have as many passports and things like that. And the company that we were working for did not want to give us, obviously. So we simulated that data using, different backgrounds, different lighting conditions, etc. So we rendered those images using different fonts, etc., and created 10 million images of different text, right? And similarly, I think Facebook is using, they are trying to do gaze detection. And for that gaze detection application, they have a simulated environment the eyes are, they don't take actual data. It's very difficult to get actual data, especially in the millions. So they have a simulator which for the eye, which produces different gazes based on different eye shapes, etc. So it produces the data for AI. So they are intertwined in both ways. First of all, VR and AR, they are helping to generate data for AI, but then you can also use AI to play a game in that scenario.
Yeah. So Stefano, you've been working a lot with HoloLens. How do the applications with AI and HoloLens, what do they look like?
Look, HoloLens is a device that is untethered, so it can completely work in isolation. You don't need to connect to your laptop. You don't need to connect to your mobile device. You don't need to connect to the cloud. So it just works on its own. So technically, you wouldn't need any AI capability attached to it. It just does whatever is programmed to do. And I'll show you a few things in a moment. But said that, you will miss out a lot if you just so to speak use it for augmented reality. The power of face detection or object detection in general, text to speech, speech to text, which is another capability that is available in the Azure cloud as a cognitive service, will enhance the device itself. The device, take it as put simply a piece of hardware. Then is as you said, the sky's the limit. Try to use it in the best way possible to make it more interactive, more interesting, also from an application perspective. If you don't mind, I just want to add on this simulation topic very, very briefly, because I'm based in Australia. And if you guys heard the news at the beginning of this year, which has been a fantastic year, we had the bushfires that have been impacted the countryside and have devastated the country massively. More recently, also in California. So it's actually really a global problem. And by the time this was developing and impacting the country massively, then some technologies evolved using drones, ground drones and flying drones, to look at identifying, using some models to predict the spread of fires around, using temperature, humidity, pressure, whatever contribute to the spread of fire. Now, the good thing is that after a few months, this fire extinguished, and so the technology builders didn't have enough time and data to train the models, so they couldn't go and light another fire again just to capture the image. So and train the model. So need to simulate all these in different scenarios, in different contexts, using also a sort of augmented reality technology, where with stock images of fires, they overlaid over forest, Australian forest, to simulate an augmented reality, a virtual reality, where this fire is actually burning in different contexts, and see how they spread. In that model, they could train the model to have these drones able to capture fire. Hopefully, we will not use it again, but if it happens next year, we have technology ready to prevent and react properly.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really, I mean, that's one of the more important applications of AI. And it's good to hear about it. So I've got one more question for Satya before we move on to the next section. So Satya, we've talked about these new devices. Where can people buy it, and how can they get started?
So if you search for OpenCV AI Kit Kickstarter, then you will land on the Kickstarter page. On the Kickstarter page, there is a button that says pre-order, and you can pre-order now. And I don't remember exactly what is the time we are promising right now, but I think it will be in the January, February framework, time frame. So people will have to wait a little bit, but we are also giving a pretty good discount over the retail price. So people
they
can
should
go.
ask for money this Christmas instead of presents, and then get one in January and start
That's
hacking,
right.
I guess.
That's right.
And so you're offering free courses. I guess those are available on the website as well, so people can sign
So
up.
the free course is not yet available on the website. It will be available by the end of the year. That is, that's the first deliverable we have as part of the Kickstarter campaign pledges. And by the end of December, people will start receiving their devices, and we will release courses as well as free models.
Oh, cool, awesome. So that's all we have time for today for as far as OpenCV is concerned. So if people have any further questions, I guess they can go to your website and ask the questions there, or are there any other places they can go for questions?
They can simply email to they can simply email to kickstarter@opencv.org, and somebody will respond. Sorry,
Cool.
Stefano.
Now, a quick question for you, actually, Sadia.
Yeah.
Is the OpenCV AI kit available globally? I'm asking because HoloLens is not. For some reason, Microsoft decided to ship HoloLens to some countries first, US first, and then others, and then going global.
Yes, it is available. There are obviously some countries which are restricted, like North Korea, etc. You cannot ship there, and I think Iran is also in that category. But other than that, we ship everywhere. There is only one catch, that in some countries the duties are pretty high, something like 20-30%. So that people have to be cognizant about, that the price could be much higher than what they anticipate.
Sure,
cool.
Good to know.
Yeah, thank you very much. And as mentioned, if you have any questions for us as a global AI community, feel free to ask them on Twitter, on our live chat, on YouTube, or other places. To remember, for the best question, we're giving away a $50 gift card from Amazon. C# Corner has been friendly to us, and they promised us to give away a $50 gift card every episode, so that's good to know. And I haven't checked actually. Alicia, have you seen any pictures yet on Twitter for the Oculus Quest device?
I haven't been checking because I've been enraptured by this conversation about the AI toolkit, and I see all the interest, and I'm sure everybody who saw that episode is going to go out and get one for Christmas. But,
I'm pretty sure they will.
My picture will be up on Twitter soon enough. So
pretty cool. So
I can't win, but I'll participate.
So who's the next speaker, Alicia?
So next up is Stefano Tempesta, and he's here to talk to us about the HoloLens. So
virtual eye vision, I've heard. So that connects nicely together with the stuff that Satya talked before in the previous section, giving actually people who are blind a sort of an eye vision. I'm curious. So show us what you've got to share.
Thank you. And look, it really does connect really well with what Satya said. I'll give another angle. Is the cloud angle. Satya said a very important thing. The cost of cloud can skyrocket if it's not under control, and especially if you use it for training or using GPUs and these sort of things. Obviously, there are ways around it to optimize cost and performance at the same time. But what I want to show you now is a combination of hardware, HoloLens, but not only, as we will see towards the end, spoiler, and also the possibility to access cloud services that are hosted in Azure, that are completely on a serverless platform that run as opposite to the edge. So for the audience here today, it's the great opportunity to hear both opportunities. You build at the edge, you build in the cloud, and then it's up to you. You really choose what is more convenient according to your specific needs and your business model. So let me go and share my screen. I have a few slides, and then I want to show you also something in action. This is a technology that is meant to describe world and people around the visually impaired. I invite you to watch this video for a little moment.
All the technology of virtual reality and augmented reality is about acquiring the information about what's out there in the scene and then converting it to other uses. All these things are coming together largely as a result of consumer technology, not because someone wanted to build a device for the blind. And we're just riding that wave and combining these different devices and concepts to make a new thing that never existed before.
The HoloLens creates a 3D mesh of the physical space to overlay virtual information on top of physical space. What we did is to try to take advantage of that, but overlay sound or auditory objects on top of physical scenes.
Imagine you are in a world where all the objects around you have voices. When you first walk into a new space, you can simply have the objects call themselves out one at a time from left to right.
Floor lamp, laptop, picture,
And
table,
then you
chair.
can switch to spotlight mode, for example, and point your head towards different objects in the scene. They get activated and speak their names to you. It tries to communicate the visual world at the cognitive level, at the level of language, at the level of understanding.
Navigation started. Follow me. Follow me.
Essentially, we invented this virtual guide. It always stays a few steps ahead of the user. It calls out, follow me, up 2 flights of stairs, around a few corners, a long stretch of corridor, and then a final turn into my office.
That was pretty cool.
We have 7 blind subjects, and they all managed to do the task to my second floor office the first round.
It was very gratifying to see that the blind person could come to the lab, put on our device, and make their way through the building without further assistance. The sky's the limit for what kind of functionalities you want to build into a device like that, because it's essentially a software problem. We'd like to see this device used and offered at the entrance of large spaces, more or less the way you would adopt an audio guide when you walk into a museum. Right? Plug the headphones in and off you go.
Well, yes, this is a great use of technology. The combination of the HoloLens device, the combination of some services that I will show you in a moment. So how about we dig inside the technology and see how something like this can be built in the Azure platform. Now, if you were wondering, this is an experience done by Caltech. Yes, that's exactly the University of Sheldon Cooper. All right, HoloLens. HoloLens is an untethered device. It means that it can run completely on its own without requiring connectivity, without requiring being plugged, and without being connected, wired or wireless to any other device like a laptop or a mobile phone. It has cameras, it has speakers, it has sensors, and it is indeed a little computer in its way. It has a GPU, it has a holographic processing unit, storage, and different ways of connecting to the outside world. As I briefly mentioned before, it's not that lightweight. So wearing it for a long time is probably not the best experience you can have. And there is development in this space, which I will mention towards the end. And also the duration of the battery probably is not fantastic. So you can really use it comfortably for a couple of hours. After that, you will probably want to take a break. And as being a computer in its own, it runs a special version of a Windows operating system for holographic functionality, Edge as a browser, and a few other apps in the Dynamics 365 for remote assistance to enable technicians of the field to operate with a subject matter expert back in the office to assist over machineries and so on. As Cortana for voice recognition and a few other things. So let's say, okay, I want to build an app for HoloLens. Well, at a very high level, the way an app for HoloLens works is you have to consider it as you would consider any other computer to connect to as any other device. So you build the holographic app that connect the device to some services that will process all this flow of information that you retrieve, all this data, this telemetry data. You've seen in the video before that there is a scanning of the environment around, and as we will see in a moment, there are capabilities around detecting faces, detecting people, identifying these people as well. So working against a database of celebrities and recognize these celebrities by their face, or pre-training a model of your friends and family and colleagues, and using face detection and identification as well. Now, all this is possible because of some services that we use. And today I want to speak to a couple of services. They are called Azure Cognitive Services. Is a serverless platform completely hosted in the Azure cloud, with the potential also to run at the edge. But the power of it is that all these services are all machine learning power. They are exposed as a REST API in the cloud, in the Azure cloud. So you don't have to provision any infrastructure for it. You just have to subscribe and start using it. And the good news is that you can start using for free. So there is a free tier that allows you to do a number of calls to the service without paying a single dollar. And still, but despite being strongly powered by machine learning, you're not required to be a data scientist or data engineer at all. These are REST API. They hide the complexity of it, and then you have the possibility to consume it from any device, from any application. I'll show you a few in a moment. So, for example, computer vision is probably one of the largest of these APIs. Can do detection of object, can do detection of faces, form, ink recognition, and as you can imagine, being sort of a serverless platform, all these models, with the images of any type, they've been pre-trained by Microsoft engineers who have spent uncountable number of hours to upload thousands and thousands of images and labeling all these images. Now, this is great because you can use this computer vision capability straight away without going through the training process. So here, the cloud doesn't cost you a cent or so, because you don't have to provision GPUs and do any sort of training. It's already been done for you. And but still, you have the possibility with custom vision to customize the object detection using your own model. So you can increase the accuracy of your computer vision capability by bringing your own data set. Now, face detection is the one that I want to focus a bit today, as an API to detect and identify people, emotions, and attributes. And rather than showing this in a still image, how about we go in the browser, and super simple, you just have to search for Azure Cognitive Services. You will end up on this page here, where you can see all the different services that are available: decision, language, speech, vision in the one that I'm after, okay? And all the different services are available in here. So click on face, and you will have the possibility to understand how that works. Let me just switch here so we can get more attributes. And as you can see, there is an object here, a JSON object, which is the response of the API that identifies the rectangle of the face, or where the face is inside the picture, and some attributes in here. So I have a little simulator of the app that shows exactly this in action, which I'm going to show you in a moment. So let me open it. Is a simulator of all the different cognitive services. Okay, so we'll focus on face for today. And as you can see, there are some celebrities in there that are already been pre-classified. And when I pick one of these, I'm doing a call to this API, which is super simple. It's just a HTTP call to a REST endpoint, and I get back that JSON object, which detects both images, so both face within an image, and the coordinate of image 1 and image 2, and as you can see, all the different attributes, gender, estimate age, whether they're smiling, whether they're wearing glasses, any other face attribute. I guess for the men we should get some values in here, as you can see, and emotions. All these values are between 0 and 1, where 0 means not detected at all, and 1, happy family, happy couple that have been detected. And this obviously works if you upload a picture, if you take another picture. So how about that? Now I need to stop my own video, otherwise there is a conflict of camera, and then I can take it here. It's gonna be me. Hello there. How about we do that face? All right, and then confirm, send it to the API. It will come up here, face detected, and again, gender, age, thank you, very generous, reading glasses, and a few other attributes. What am I? Oh, it came out as a neutral. Okay, I didn't do my angry face too much well this morning for me. All right, then the other thing you can do is that you can also detect a face, so you can actually see who is in the picture. Now it's not going to work with me. I'm not a celebrity, so I'm not in the database of VIPs yet. I'm working on it, but we can do something like that. So I can invite here Harry, which is sitting next to me, to take a picture. Harry, do you mind taking a picture for? Here we go. Harry is coming. Okay, so send the picture to the API. Thank you, Harry. That was generous of you. Face detected is still the same guy in here. So if we find a match, now the second part of the API is to detect, and boom, it came out here in red, that the picture where that person has been detected. Okay, so that's the way it works. Obviously, if I had a custom model, I can upload pictures of my family, friends, pets. Why not? It doesn't work only with people, it works with any kind of object, as long as they are labeled, and then it will detect and recognize. So this is the foundation. This is what we will do now to start building this application, an application that identifies the world around you and detect people, if possible, identify these people, describe how they look like, what they're doing, and then translate this into a voice command. And this is the second part of it, in voice instructions, I mean. And this is the second part of it, is using the speech API, which has, again, different flavor: speech to text, text to speech, speech translation, and speaker recognition. So recognize the voice of a person and identify that person. So from the tone of voice, it will be able to say, hey, this is John, this is Mary. And again, this has to work against a preloaded database of voices that has been trained, and you can personalize this with your own family and friends and colleagues and so on. So in the specific technology that I'm after now is a text-to-speech, because all the data that has been detected by the vision, the computer vision technology, is translated into text, and this text now has to be voiced to the visually impaired people that are using the device. And the way it works, again, there is something in there that we can test immediately. So let me go back to my cognitive services, go to speech. This is going to be text to speech. And we can test this directly in the browser here. So you see I have different voices that I can pick, from Arabic all the way to Tamil, and different accent as well. You can pick Australian English. It defaulted to this because, as I mentioned, I'm based in Australia, but there are also different other flavors. So how about we take English US? Different voices, female and male voice, style of the voice. You want something more cheerful, something more professional, and then you can also tune the speed and the pitch. So we can say, hello everybody, welcome to the global AI community. All right, and just listen.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the global AI community.
And obviously, different accent will produce different voice, different intonation. And if you want to do the chipmunk effect, just tune up on the pitch.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the global AI community.
And you can have fun as much as you want. Okay, so this is all available in there. You can start completely for free. You start paying for the services after a significant volume of data. And this is great to enable developers without provisioning any infrastructure, without uploading any models, without doing any training. You just get started and focus on building your application rather than the AI part of it, which may not be accessible to everybody. So, too much. In summary, in case you were wondering, this text-to-speech is able to synthesize speech into live, into speakers, or into an audio file, or into a memory stream. So the memory stream, it will be useful when connecting to a device. So you can the API can synthesize the speech, then you store it in memory, and then send this stream to the device, to whatever speakers, HoloLens you're using. It can even do long asynchronous audios, and it will work completely asynchronously. So then you just render the video over 10 minutes typically, and then get back when it's done and saved. As a support for standard and neural voices, so voices that improve and learn over time. Support for over 45 languages, different voice, male and female, and also different other flavors. There is an SDK, a software development kit, for a few programming languages. So that means that you don't have to code directly the API, so you don't have to do an HTTP request. What you can do is a single call to two lines of code. Actually, you know what? I can show you here because I have the project open in front of me, which is gonna be somewhere like this is speech, this is text to speech. So I'll just show you very briefly how that looks like. You create a speech config here. This is in C#, that's my preferred programming language. And then speak to the speaker, audio config, speech synthesizer, speaks to text, speech text. That's it. This is all you have to do to render your text directly to the default speaker. So it's super simple by using the SDK. So it makes very, very accessible. And it also supports SSML, that's speech synthesis markup language, which is a XML type of language where you can define the tone of voice, some breaks, a sequence of sentences. So make it more and more natural. It comes out actually pretty natural. It doesn't sound as a robotic voice at all. There is a massive development in this space. All right, so before I take a few questions, I invite you to pay attention again for another couple of minutes on this video, where we have Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, inviting an engineer at Microsoft to showcase an enhancement to this technology, which goes beyond the limitation of the HoloLens and use these cognitive services in more advanced way, with everything that I show you so far, but bundle into one real application that does face recognition, people recognition, object detection, and text-to-speech synthesis.
And one developer truly inspired me this last year, very close to home for us at Microsoft. I want to see what he dreamt of. Roll the video.
I love making things which improve people's lives. And one of the things I've always dreamt of since I was at university was this idea of something that could tell you at any moment what's going on around you.
I think it's a man jumping in the air doing a trick on a skate.
All right, I really hope you get inspired to build apps that can be socially useful and improve this world a little better. If you want to get started, cognitive services in Azure, face recognition, text-to-speech are just some of the few that are available. And if you are after the HoloLens device, programming HoloLens as well. So thank you very much. Social coordinates on screen. If you want to get in touch for any follow-up questions, please feel free to do so. And any questions for me right now?
Thank you, Stefano. And I think it's great how when we have optimizations and enhancements in the different services, they kind of improve the other services. So when there's enhancements in text, cognitive services, then vision also has additional capabilities. So I really enjoy working in the ecosystem. We do have a question from the viewer, and one of the concerns that we have as a society is some of these tools are allowing us to take objects and people in and out of images, as well as recreate voices and emulate people. So we've seen with deep fakes that this can create a lot of disinformation. So what are your thoughts on how Microsoft is going about addressing some of those issues?
Look, there is a big problem in AI that data scientists will agree with, is on removing bias from models. Unfortunately, there is no simple solution except try to be more as ethical and fair as possible in creating, in training models that are as inclusive as possible. That, for example, you can think face recognition can be when detecting emotions, when detecting age, when detecting gender, is obviously biased towards the stereotype of a male and a female. And we know the world is not just binary. So there is obviously an exercise, an effort that has to be made in trained models to remove this bias and improve the accuracy. There is no solution except doing hard work on classifying different images and improve this level of detection as much as possible. It's probably not possible to remove bias at all, simply because we as people, when we classify the images, we are also sort of driven by bias ourselves. But leveraging the power of open communities, the power of mass crowd intelligence, it is possible to remove this over and over time. Very briefly, I have made an experience some time ago in skin condition detection. So recognizing some conditions on your face, whether it's wrinkles, acne, crown feet, and then there is a commercial application that I'm not going to go into it over recommending some product to address this concern. And obviously that will work really well on white middle-aged women because the model was trained to the target market. Anybody else that doesn't fit into this category then wouldn't be recognized that easily. And that is a problem because, well, it was a commercial choice to target that audience, but in general is an audience when you offer public services like the Azure Cognitive Services, you want to remove bias as much as possible to make it fair and more inclusive.
There's also the use of domains in computer vision. So do you feel that as more people use these services, and you mentioned open source, that there will be kind of a proliferation of domain type data subsets that people start sharing in the open source community?
Yes, very good question and very big hope in this. There is already a sort of concept of domain of skills in the conversational AI, which address specifically chatbots and sort, especially in the customer service. You don't want to build you don't want any probably you cannot build a chatbot that is able to have any sort of conversation whatsoever, from a football result to a data scientist conversation. You want to have something that is specific, tailored to the domain, optimized. The same is for computer vision. It will very likely focus on a specific domain, skill your computer vision AI to detect one sort of object over the other one. Before, when Satya was speaking, there was a question: can the device identify registration numbers, registration plate for cars in all the countries in the world? You don't need that, because you're not using that camera, that one single camera in every countries in the world, unlikely. So optimize for the US, optimize for the UK, optimize for Italy, optimize for Australia. The same device, but trained to different models so that is optimized to detect the registration plate in this country. Improve accuracy, reduce the training effort, and get better result at the end.
And I guess it works better on the HoloLens in that case, because you need less space, less compute power to actually predict what's on the license plate.
Especially when running at the edge, you're absolutely right. The edge is not like the cloud where you can allocate a terabyte and terabyte of storage. You need to work on compressed, compact models. So anything that you can save from a space and computing perspective will improve the performance of the device. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. We're out of time, sadly.
Sure.
I know for a fact that the HoloLens is a very interesting topic on its own. So if people are interested, they can probably
chat anyway. So if people have questions, I'll stay on top of the chat and answer now.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefano.
Alicia, what do you think?
So
shall we do a bit of VR this time? We've talked about AR, computer vision, VR maybe.
I'm the day just keeps getting better and better, and I'm definitely excited to be hosting our next speaker, Melissa McGregor, and she's joining us from Oklahoma, and she's here to talk to us about VR projects with brain.js. So we're going to be looking at integrating JavaScript, VR, and AI, and all these fun things. I think we are waiting for her video feed, but
have you ever done anything with AI in JavaScript, Alicia?
And I haven't done anything in JavaScript in a while.
Oh, so JavaScript in general. Wow.
Yeah, no, it's 80% of projects right now tend to involve ingestion, and that's a lot of where my time is spent. And I do get to talk a lot to people about IoT and where they're putting their data, and but it's so exciting how they're enabling everyone to, like, we're talking about hardware getting smaller, right? So just the capabilities, and then the enhancement in the capabilities and how quickly it's happening, and on top of that, the importance that people are placing on bias and ethics is just phenomenal. And we were talking about this in another session, how some of these bias questions, they come up and we make improvements against them so quickly that, everybody's, and you don't get that type of responsiveness and improvements unless everybody thinks it's an issue, right? So we have Melissa here on the line with us now.
Welcome.
Thank you
Video
for
connection
joining.
is working, so welcome to the show. And we were just discussing that we haven't seen a lot of JavaScript stuff in the AI scene. We're mostly building models in C++ and Python. Actually, I do a lot of Python and almost no C++ at all. So I guess thanks to the Moore's law, we have enough compute power to run JavaScript in a VR device and do something interesting with AI. So I'm curious what that looks like. But first, I've talked to you before the show a few days ago, and we had a lovely discussion about AI. What sort of work do you do during the day?
So I work on just different React apps and some CI/CD pipeline tools, and I'm actually just kind of all over the place.
So you're sort of the profile, a regular developer that sort of ran into the whole AI thing. Is that correct?
Actually, I have my master's in mechanical and aerospace engineering, so I did some research with like robotics and AI. I was able to build an autonomous golf cart, so that's where I got into AI the first time.
Oh, Alicia, we made a big mistake. We should have asked her about an automated golf cart. I mean, that's so much more interesting, but I guess we're lucky enough to have you for the VR stuff.
Christmas. If you could help me out with a puppy.
With a puppy?
Yeah, we have a global AI puppy these days. I adopted it somehow remotely over the internet. I don't know what happened. I made a mistake somewhere. So we're going to talk a little bit about VR. So you mentioned React VR. Can you explain a little bit how that works actually? How would I actually build a VR application in React?
So the good thing is you don't actually need React to build a VR app. So there's a few different JavaScript libraries. Like my favorite is A-Frame, and it makes it super easy to make a VR app with just some HTML and assets and a little bit of JavaScript.
Cool.
So how did you get started?
Honestly, with the VR app, I just kind of wanted to make a VR app. So I started looking around and reading different articles and trying to find tools. And of course, there were a lot of them in Python and C# and stuff like that. But I really, really like JavaScript. So I wanted to find a way to bring VR to JavaScript, and somebody already did it for me. So using A-Frame made it really easy to just get started and up and running just in a browser.
Wow. VR applications in the browser, how does that combine with the VR glasses that we just showed at the beginning of the episode, the Oculus Quest? Can it run on there, or how does that work actually, the whole process?
So they can run on like a HoloLens or an Oculus Rift or something like that. It's just you have to export them in that specific format.
Okay, so you're basically building this VR application in your browser on your computer, and then you can package it up and export it to the VR device of your choice. And I guess most popular ones are supported by the product.
Mm-hmm. I know for sure the Oculus Rift is supported. I think the thing that Samsung makes is supported. I forget what it's called, but the main popular devices are supported by A-Frame.
Oh, cool. So, and then there's the AI component. We've seen from Satya at the beginning of this episode that there's a lot of stuff you can do with computer vision these days. Actually, they've been working on it for 20 years. How does that combine with VR in this case? What sort of thing have you built using AI in VR?
So in this case, it's more of like how a user interacts with the VR world. So things move around according to their interactions. Basically, let's say we're trying to find objects in a game or just in a world or whatever. Depending on how fast or how well people are finding things, we can move the objects around so that they'll stay interested in the world, and it'll increase and decrease the difficulty as they need it so they don't just quit and leave.
That sounds interesting. Cool. And what sort of tool are you using to build this in your application?
So this is all of the code is written in just VS Code, and yeah, it's all just JavaScript. It's like building a really big, complicated web app.
Okay. Any special libraries you use for AI applications in VR?
Brain.js is my personal favorite just because it's super easy to get started with. Like, if you can work with arrays, objects, and arrays of objects, you can do AI in JavaScript. That
sounds exactly like my kind of AI. Large arrays of numbers. Now we're talking. Now I get it. I mean, I've done JavaScript in the past for a few years, and it's the language is so weird. Actually, in the training that I followed around JavaScript, they teach me all these conversions rather than a type system because it should have one. I don't know about it, but it sounds interesting. Arrays of objects, basically numbers. And can you show us what the Brain.js, how it works, what it looks like?
Sure. Let me share my screen real quick. Hopefully that won't be too hard of a thing to do.
Otherwise, our AI application can find it. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so if you're familiar with just any web apps in JavaScript, this is a Node.js app. So we have some basic stuff in here, like we're importing our packages and setting up a little Express app and just some, regular web app stuff there. But this is where it actually gets interesting. So this is just a sample of the training data we're going to use for the neural network, because of course you can use neural networks in JavaScript now. But basically you can see it's just this array with these different objects in them. And for this particular application, we look at the user's position in the world. So their X, Y, and Z positions, they're all in meters, which I'm super happy about. But
so we do have a request if we could possibly zoom a little bit into the code. And
yeah, much better.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
No problem. But yeah, so we get the user's location, we figure out if they found an item or not, and we look at how many steps they've taken. So those are just like some of the features we're looking at to start with. And then just some of our, expected output data. We want to know, based on their location, if they found something and how many steps they've taken in the world, if they'll actually finish the task that we've given them. And pretty much based on that, we have our training input data and our training output data, and we go ahead and combine that in just one giant array. Then the fun part is here. So this is a neural network, just this one line of code. It has 3 hidden layers in it, and that is the entire neural network right there. That's why I like JavaScript so much, because they made it super, super simple, super easy. But after we have our neural net set up, then we go ahead and train it with that data set that we went through earlier, and it gives us our model. So you can look at some of the stats on it. Let me see if that's still here from when I started it. Yeah, so you can look at some of the stats on the model after it's been trained. That error's, I don't know how I feel about that error, but that's what it is. That's how many iterations it took to get to a decent model. And that last one, the will finish, that's just a prediction on some new data we have that tells us if the user or the player will actually finish the task we've given them. But really, all it comes down to is this line of code is our trained model. So we've trained it, we know all of the things about it, and this line was just to give an example of what it looks like when you run the model with this new data it hasn't seen before. And then the rest of it is really just like how that data gets used in the application itself. And if you were curious about what the VR app looks like, this is it. So this is all just in the browser. You can wander around. I wonder if I can still find one of the objects in here. So basically you can just walk around, look for the stuff that was on the list, and based on how long it takes you to find things, the different objects in the world will move around to try to accommodate like the user's skill level. Maybe it'll help them like find things faster, or it'll slow them down if they're getting through stuff too fast. But you find an object, you click on it, and it goes back to like the home base position. So this one in particular is just a really big search and find, because I like those kind of games and stuff. But the point of adding the AI in here was to really make the game custom to the user so that it matches their skill level. If they're going through the game really, really fast, we want to slow them down so they actually get to experience the virtual reality world. And if they're having some problems finding things, we want to encourage them to keep going so that they will eventually finish and they won't just abandon the world forever.
Sounds really cool. And so I saw some interesting pieces of code in there. Maybe if we can go back to your editor. So in here, there's a one-liner to actually construct a neural network. And I'm interested in, so you specify hidden layers. What else can I specify actually in this function, in this constructor for the neural network?
So with the neural network in particular, it's really just the hidden layers. Like, I think there are a few other options. Let me see if I can just get the magic code button. So yeah, we can add an activation node, some threshold stuff, and if we want to make this a leaky ReLU alpha. But these are the only other things you can add to that neural network, at least for now. I know that they're working on adding a lot more features. Like, one thing Brain.js is working on adding are convolutional neural networks, which will be really cool to have in JavaScript.
Yeah, I can imagine that this works for the most basic scenarios. This is basically just a feed-forward network. So how new is Brain.js actually at the moment?
Brain.js has been around for at least a few years now. I think there was a point the original creator passed it off to the current maintainer, but it's been around for at least 2 or 3 years.
Okay, so it's not completely new. It's just that it's still, it looks like it's pretty limited in functionality right now. So what other options do I have if I want to build neural networks in JavaScript or use them for that matter?
Let's see, for building neural networks in JavaScript, recently I found out that there are a few like JavaScript equivalents to some of the Python libraries. Like, there's a num.js library instead of NumPy. There's the Keras.js. So that one is really powerful. It's almost as powerful as the Python version of it, but it's still relatively new in JavaScript, the whole machine learning AI thing. So there's still a lot of development left.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's actually the first time that I've seen an implementation of machine learning algorithm in JavaScript, and it looks really interesting. I guess if you're coming from a background of web development and doing CSS, HTML, those kind of things, this would make more sense to you instead of building a neural network in Python, where you have a lot more options to think about. I guess that makes it really interesting for people to get started with this.
Yeah, one thing that is really cool about the JavaScript implementations is that they do strip out a lot of the background knowledge you need. So you don't have to know about the statistical analysis that goes behind all the calculations. You don't have to worry as much about cleaning data or making sure it's in a certain form. As long as you can put it in an array of objects, this will handle it.
Sounds cool. And what about performance? How fast would you say this is?
That is one thing that it does lack a little bit. It is kind of slow. Like, so far, I haven't used any of the JavaScript machine learning libraries in production just because the performance on them, it isn't the greatest when you're feeding them new data at the same time that they're making predictions.
Yeah, exactly. So if people want to try this out, where can they learn more about this? Do you have a code repository where people, for example, can download this stuff?
Oh, yeah. I have a GitHub for this in particular. So I guess I can just show you the link. If you go to my user at FootCoder, you can go in here to It's Hot. That's the name of the game. But so yeah, this is where you can go to just play with this VR app.
Oh, cool.
It looked pretty green to me, but we were discussing earlier that trees make people happy. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think this game will make me a happy person as long as there's enough green in there. And I guess if people want to try this out, they can certainly add more objects to find, more tricks with neural networks, I guess, to make this even more interesting.
I'd have to add a beach.
Yes,
definitely. We need a beach in there. Yeah.
But if you were interested in just making your own VR app, this is all of the code that makes up that entire world. Like, I think it's not even 100 lines of code to make this whole VR world and include the AI in it.
So, do you have any other plans for integrating AI in a VR project?
Oh yeah. So one of the things that I'm gonna try
I saw your smile pop up, and that was so quick. It was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this because I haven't seen a lot of AI in VR yet, and I'm a little bit surprised. But kind of where
we'll connect you with some people, and we'll get that accelerated, right?
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah, if people are interested in this sort of stuff, they should definitely check your website. There should be a GitHub repo attached to it, if I'm not mistaken. So what we'll do is we will actually share your link as a resource to this episode.
Nice.
People may not know this yet, but you can watch this whole stream back after we are done. You can actually rewind, I believe, in the stream. But after we are done with the show, we will cut up all the videos that we've made, all the sections of the show, and we will have extra links and resources underneath that, so people can find your website and give this a shot. I mean, it sounds really interesting trying to use JavaScript to run AI models, for that matter. I guess from your story that if people want to get started, this is a great place. If they want something more, they should probably try the Curious.js, I think.
I think so. That one has a little bit more, I want to say maybe a little bit more depth to it. So it does work a lot like the Python version of it. And that'll give you those CNNs that I've been really, really waiting for.
Cool. So once you have those, you should definitely come back and show us the upgraded game with beaches, more trees, more grass, and a CNN in there. I'm excited.
Me too.
We'll see you in February.
Yeah, because another project I'm working on is an air guitar. So I have these like I have EEG and EMG sensors that I wrap around my head and put on my arms. And based on the notes that you think about and the way that you move your fingers, it translates that into guitar sounds. So I'm super excited about that one.
Oh, wow. That sounds
Is
really
that going to
cool.
be ready for February, do you think?
Actually, yeah, I think that one should be ready by February.
I feel like putting up a AI for music show. I don't know
Yes.
how that will work out, but that sounds like a really awesome idea for the community.
AI's
So
got talent.
if people are interested in that, let us know. We could definitely work something out.
Nice.
So, and with that, I would like to thank you very much for your time, and for joining us for that matter. So, if people have more questions to you, they can probably ask them in the live chat. Feel free to join that one. Also, if you have questions for us, and you happen to have a very good and a very fun question for us, you can get a chance at winning a Oculus Quest 2 device. We'll announce a winner at the end of the show. And also important to note that if you're not much of a photo person,
If you're a little camera shy, you can still
yeah,
ask a question.
exactly. That was the correct order. The photo is for the Oculus Quest because that's visual, and the other thing is for writing us a great question. So feel free to ask us questions and send us your pictures of you watching the Global AI show live. So thank you very much again.
Yeah,
And
thanks for having me.
with that, I would like to invite Elizabeth to join us. And that was fast.
Hi.
Welcome.
Normally, how this works, Alicia, in the studio is the one guest walks away. You have sort of a short break, and the other guest pops in. And I've got time to drink my glass of water, maybe stretch a little bit or something. We should do that a bit. So stretch. I'm ready for the next one.
Well,
How
I'm
about
glad she's here because I'm dying to hear her session.
you? Me too.
Yes.
No pressure.
I'm wanting to know how close that we are to getting those puppies for Christmas. So I know you're talking about human interactions, but this is going to make my mechanical puppy more interactive with my 7-year-old. Sorry, the puppy I have now snores. So,
okay.
I would like a non-snoring mechanical puppy, please.
We'll see what we can do on that. By Christmas,
Yeah.
we'll see what we can do.
You should know, Elizabeth, that we have a Global AI puppy since tonight. In our pre-show, so we started a little bit early to test out our sound settings in video, etc. And we had a short chat. And Alicia has a small dog, and I adopted it somehow. It's a Global AI dog. But I'm not sure. Did I adopt a mechanical puppy or the real one? What will it be?
So my training algorithms are awesome, and he is just extremely well trained.
Okay, then I don't mind. Either one is fine. So, Elizabeth, you're actually working for Cisco Collaboration as the head of innovation. That sounds like an interesting job.
Not for all of Cisco, for just specifically collaboration, our CTO team, yes.
Yeah. You collaborate all day on innovation, or how does this actually work? Can you tell us a little bit what your day looks like actually as an innovation person?
Sure. I'm actually need to try to share some slides here too, and this is giving me a little bit of an issue. So I'm going to see if I can bring this up while I'm talking.
Sure.
I'm a picture person, so let me know if that comes up and you guys can see that.
Yes, it's visible on screen.
You can see okay, perfect. So yeah, what I do on a day-to-day basis changes pretty much, but I head up our part of our team that's focused on disruptive innovation for Cisco Collaboration. So we tend to look at things that are several years down the pike that could become products. So we get to do a lot of tinkering, a lot of playing, a lot of exploring, which is a lot of fun. But we're also dealing with technology that we likely won't see in our hands and in common usage anytime in the very immediate future. So we definitely have to have the long time frame in mind. What I wanted to talk about a little bit today is basically taking us probably another 10,000 levels up from the last presentation, which is awesome, by the way. and looking a little bit more at what is the often overlooked side of technology, which is the people that are actually going to use it. I know this is a fault of myself and my team. We often get very excited about what the technology can do, the capabilities of the technology, which is great and amazing, but we can very easily get bogged down into this is so cool, we should do this, and not stop to think, should we actually do this? Do people want this? Will people use this? Does it make their life better? So that's primarily what I want to talk about today, and then relate that back to human and AI interaction. But start by talking about human interaction. What makes us uniquely human? And I swear I didn't know you guys were going to be talking about trees earlier, but I do have a slide with trees here. But I wanted to start with why people do the things that we do. So bear with me a little bit. I told you we're going to go several layers up here. But if you've ever walked down a tree-lined street in the middle of summer and just heard that hum of lawnmowers and smelled the fresh cut grass and found yourself instantly transported back to summers as a kid, feeling the sun on your face, the warm breeze in your hair, you know and understand how powerful certain sights, smells, senses can evoke these vivid memories. That's part of what we as people, that's what we do. This is how we interact. So when it comes to things like the smell of cookies baking at the holiday time, if you've ever gone through hours and hours of painful travel, going through airports and horrendous traffic and even worse weather, just to get home, to hear your family argue at the holidays, to smell those familiar smells, you understand how important it is to get that sense and feeling of home, that sense and feeling of community. This is partially what we do. This is how we understand what it is to be human. These things are not necessarily logical nor programmable. So when we're talking about what it is to be uniquely human, we as a species do things that only humans do. We do things that are emotional, things that are irrational, things that are oftentimes illogical. And it is what makes us unique. We have traditions. We have things that many of them that don't make any sense. We repeat them every year. We do crazy things when our sports teams are playing. We do them just because it makes us happy. And we also, the flip side of it, we avoid things because we have these completely irrational fears. And anytime we try to apply that to computers and technology and AI, it's very hard to program that humanity into it. So that's what I want to get into a little bit. We also, as a society, we do some things that are decidedly unpredictable as individuals, but can be very predictable in a group when we do things in a group. I like this quote from the French poet journalist Anatole France. He said, "Human nature is to think wisely and act in an absurd fashion." Today, I want to talk about basically what makes us human, what drives our interactions, and how we can bring those human-to-human relational tenets into what we expect of our technology, how we think our technology will be used and adopted. I also want to talk a little bit about my personal predictions and theories on what I think technology adoption behavioral shifts we can expect in the next 5 to 10 years. These take them with a grain of salt. These are my predictions. Feel free to argue them. And what we think breakthroughs in the technology itself, computer vision, machine learning, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, what we think that might translate to. But first, I'm going to spend more of the time talking about humans as a species and who we are and why we do the things we do. We are relational. We are social creatures. So much of what we do evolves around groups. We do things together. We go to the movies together. We watch sporting events together. We attend music concerts together. We like to sweat together in fitness classes. We'll go out of our way to sit shoulder to shoulder to watch a theatrical performance, to watch a symphony. We'll spend more money, more time in traffic and lines and uncomfortable seats just to do things together as a group. And this is something in the current world situation, many people are missing this element of it because we like being together with other people. We like that social element. We work in groups, live in groups, play in groups. It's who we are. There's also, as a group, we can be very unpredictable and we can change our minds collectively. I have to bring up open floor plans. This is always something that hits a nerve with people. They either love them or hate them. But if you think about as a society, as a group, as a global society, you don't have to go that many years far back to think when all the companies were moving to these open floor plans. And the internet was flooded with these, who's moving to open floor plans, why they're great, what we love about them, how you work better in them, why to do it now, how you're going to save money. And then it's only a short period of time after that, we collectively as a society changed our mind. And we basically said, open floor plans are bad. They don't work. This is why it's failed. This is why you should ditch it, even though you just invested in it. This is how we're going to fix them going forward. We as a society are very changeable. And if we believe the Albert Einstein quote here, that intelligence is the ability, measure of intelligence, the ability to change, then and humans are truly superior, albeit quite fickle in that regard. So when this comes to human interaction, we're very complex in the way that we interact. Again, this is why it is so challenging to make realistic AI. We have social cues and norms that are just phenomenally interrelated and very complex. There was a MacArthur Genius Grant by the name of Amos Tversky. Him and his colleague Daniel Kahneman, he won the Nobel Peace Prize Award in economics. There were two psychologists back in the 70s, and they went through this experiment to actually scientifically prove, that humans as a species are not rational creatures, and we systematically make decisions that really defy logic, but that is actually a good thing. Because we don't make these decisions solely by weighing facts, it's not just a factually based decision. We often add in all these other things that are very illogical and irrational, but the outcome, we actually often make better decisions because of it. So they were really focused on the fact of the relationships. People are not that complicated themselves, but when you start getting the relationships between people and the dynamics, it gets phenomenally more complicated, and it was very hard to pinpoint that. But it creates these really rich and multi-level decisions that really are the fabric of our society. One example I want to use about this is expression. So this is actually pictures of my eldest daughter, and aside from just wanting to put big pictures of my cute kid in here and have blackmail photos for when she's older, she was a very, very expressive baby, more so than my other kids, quite frankly. It is very easy to tell just by looking at some of these pictures exactly what she is thinking, what she is feeling and experiencing. When people are babies, they don't have a filter. You haven't yet learned how to have that poker face, how to have that filter. So if you've ever given a young child a food they dislike, for instance, they are not hesitant to show you through a variety of nonverbal reactions exactly their opinion and how much they dislike that. This is something that over time we learn this concept of a poker face. We learn to not wear our heart on our sleeve. But there are still micro expressions that are constantly going on in day-to-day communications. These reveal our underlying emotions, and even though we learn more to control those, fortunately in most work settings and meetings we can hide some of our inner thoughts, but it's part of that complex web of nonverbal communications. Facial expressions are huge, and that's just one piece of it. Things like body movements, posture, proximity, eye contact, tone, this is all part of that complex web of nonverbal communications. And there's arguments been made that nonverbal is actually far more important than verbal. There was a professor, Albert Mehrabian, who is a psychology professor at the University of California in LA. He did this study to explore how important verbal versus nonverbal communications are. And he had this very well-cited study. You guys probably heard about it. It was in late 1960s. And he basically concluded that body language accounts for 55% of personal communication. This tone of your voice, purely the tone, accounts for another 38%. And when it gets to actually what you are saying, the words you use, that's only 7%. It gives you just a glimpse at how important all those nonverbal cues in human interaction really are. This also clues us into why first impressions are so important. There was another very interesting study done by two psychologists at Princeton, Janine Willis and Alexander Todorov. They did this series of experiments that revealed that it only takes 1/10 of a second to form an impression of a stranger from their face. So this really gives you an idea about how important those snap judgments are. And what was interesting is they did these studies for longer and realized that even after you were exposed to somebody for a longer period of time, those impressions usually didn't drastically change. You would get more confidence in your initial judgment, but oftentimes that first impression was what stood with you. This is also some of the science behind why it matters so much when we are making that first introduction with someone, that first presentation. It also explains the entire concept of speed dating, which is basically these short timed interactions between people. Usually it's only 3 minutes, sometimes longer. And it's based on the logic that it takes people such a short time to make up their mind about someone. There was another study that was done in Ohio, Ohio State University, where scientists found that people can usually tell in the first 1 to 2 minutes whether they're interested in a relationship with another person. And they continued that study to see that after 9 weeks, that initial impression made in the first 1 to 2 minutes hardly ever changed. So you realize how strong that is. The whole book, Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, I'm sure you've come across this as well. This focuses on the power of thinking without thinking. It's all about intuition and instinct. And his phraseology is thin slicing, but it's basically the same concept of how we use limited information for a very small period of time and draw a conclusion. And these can actually be quite accurate. Now, again, apply this to human interactions overall and what is so important to us. Because we're so relational and because our relationships are so complex and they're driven by so many things like nonverbal and intangible qualities, a big underlying driver of this is trust. This is why people stay in long-term committed relationships. This is why people work with the same people for a long period of time and pull known quantities onto a new team when they're starting a new venture. It's this idea, can you trust another person? Is that person considered trustworthy? And trust is repeatedly cited time and time again as the number one quality that's valued in a relationship. That's whether it's romantic, social, business relationship. It's also credibility has been cited as one of the top qualities in a leader that make a leader a desirable leader. We put so much value on trust. I like this little visual here too. One of the things that brings us all back to cookies that I had in the beginning. I must be hungry when I made this presentation. Raisin cookies that look like chocolate chip cookies are the main reason I have trust issues. The fact that trust is so detrimental to the longevity of our relationships, the depth of our relationships, it's such a deep subject that we will often make light of it by adding some levity to the gravity of this quality of trust by memes and things like this. The concept of breaking trust is also something that's been around since basically forever, since the dawn of time. It's been referenced in art and literature. The concept of breaking bread has roots in biblical references, where it basically became synonymous with a meaningful connection made over a meal. It was the meaningful connection with another person. It basically meant this sense of familiarity with someone or a group of someone's, and it allowed you to build rapport, establish trust, and that was crucial to really founding relationships. So if we now take all this and apply this to technology, what does this mean? This was so far all been about human to human interaction. So when we start talking about human to technology interaction, we tend as people to want to apply humanizing capabilities to our technology. We tend to humanize it in a couple different ways. Before I get into this, let me first explain a little bit about who I am and what I do. So I mentioned before, I'm Director of Innovation for the Cisco Collaboration Group. Our charter for our team is focused on disruptive innovation. We are tasked with building a bridge between the state of enterprise collaboration today and the experiences that we think will be possible as technology advances in the future. So we explore, discover, experiment with, play with, tinker with, at times invent new technologies that ultimately shape the future of work. I work in technology. I'm in a future-gazing branch of technology. I work for the Office of the CTO. I'm inside of an engineering technology group at a high-tech company headquartered in the heart of Silicon Valley. It would be very easy to call myself a technologist. However, when people ask me what I do, I try to be very clear that I'm not in the technology business. I am in the people business. If I'm truly doing my job and my team is truly doing our job, the solutions that we build should fade into the background. And what comes out is a more powerful way for humans to connect and transcend these traditional barriers of time and space. That's what we're trying to do. So even though I work for a technology company, I am in the people business. So when we talk about humanizing technology, what do I mean by that? I look at humanizing technology as two different facets. Firstly, we try to use technology as a way to unlock relationships. It's important to understand that when you introduce technology to a human-to-human interaction, it doesn't replace the human interaction. it doesn't downplay the importance of it either. If anything, it should facilitate it. Basically, we humanize this technology in it by way of unlocking this connection that otherwise wouldn't be possible, thinking of it as using technology as a bridge to get to another person. A great example of this is the history of the very first telephone call. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell conducted the first telephone call ever recorded. His first words were, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." It's very interesting to me that the first usage of what ended up being a revolutionary technology ended up basically being a way to speed up and facilitate face-to-face interaction. So even the early switchboards were an interesting reminder of the connectivity brought about by it, because they would basically literally plug cables into appropriate ports to connect to people on opposite ends of a call. The second part of what I mean by humanizing technology is ascribing human tendencies to the technology itself. So beyond just using technology to facilitate access to humans, we are in some ways attempt to make our technology feel more human in a way that we want to interact with it. So what I mean by this is a couple of things. So one being the whole concept of personification. Personification, the attribute of personal nature of human characteristics, applying it to something that's non-human. This is why kids paint smiley faces on rocks. This is why the logo on the side of all your Amazon boxes looks like a smile. This is why we put these cute robot faces on robots that work in warehouses and retail environments to give them these googly eyes and cute names. We are personifying our technology. The other piece of this is a little bit more complicated, and it goes back to the concept of trust. So the idea of breaking bread that we brought up earlier, why credibility is such a desired trait in our leadership, the importance of trust is so strongly ingrained in us as humans that we apply this to our technology as well. We use the same verbiage and description when we describe technology. I had a coworker recently mention that she was in a conversation with a potential customer, and mainly because of the current situation in the world, they were using technology that they had never used before. And when they were describing what they wanted or what they needed, their main concern was around security. But what the customer wanted in their technology was end-to-end encryption in that particular solution. But the customer didn't say, "I want end-to-end encryption." What the customer said was, "I want a tool I can trust." Because we take those terms that we're familiar with and those concepts that we are familiar with, and we apply it to our technology. We apply this human vernacular to our technology exchanges. So how do we put this all together? So insights from humans in the past can help us predict how humans will adapt into technology in the future. How do we realistically expect this to change over the next 5, 10 years? This is where I'm going to get into a few of my predictions. Take this with a grain of salt. So firstly, I think we are changing where we work. This is not so much future state, this is current state. This is the world we live in right now. For better or worse, the current situation, we have collectively as a global society experienced remote working on a grand scale and found that in some areas, it doesn't work at all. In other areas, it works great. And it really depends on how and it's applied and the area that it's applied in. But I take my group personally. I've worked remotely for the last few years. This is something that many folks on my team work remotely. We're a global team across, I think, 9 different time zones, 9 hours of time zones, 4 different countries. It's a very spread team. So we're very used to working remotely, and there are certain things that we know to do, have dedicated home office space, try to keep certain hours that are work hours versus home hours. Simple things like get out of your sweatpants, get on video. It makes it easier to do remote collaboration. But the biggest lament of remote workers is usually this feeling of lack of connection. I don't feel connected to my coworkers the way I used to. And it's interesting to see how people are changing their meetings and their approach now, again, as we're doing this on a grand scale. We and my team, we've started doing these regular, no agenda, water cooler type calls that's usually involves wine, coffee, sometimes both, depending on what time zone people are in. And we're on video 100% of the time. We don't do audio calls. We do crazy themes like Hawaiian Shirt Day and Crazy Hat Day and Favorite Sports Team Day, and a way to kind of get everyone doing the same thing while remote. And that has really helped bring some camaraderie to it. But we're realizing this is just different. This changing where we work. People talk about the new normal all the time. Regardless of how work looks at your workplace a year from now, it will be different from what it is today, and it will be different from what it was a year ago. So we are absolutely changing where we work. One facet of this is security. I mentioned the customer before that said trust is so important. This concept of end-to-end and security. As you're starting to see people working from all over these different places from different connections, you're not going to see a lessening of security requirements. You're going to see an increase in this. And it really comes from our need to want to trust our machines. But it gets very complicated when you start looking at people joining from different devices, different locations, different types of networks, spotty Wi-Fi, all these types of things. So security gets really, really interesting as an area. We could probably do a whole segue on that, but I'll leave that for now. And also, we're changing how we work. We'll start looking at things beyond how do people connect in a more technologically advanced way, but how do we use technology to make that interaction even better than what you could do purely in real life? Things in augmented and virtual reality, we've talked about some today, have made major strides in the last few years, but how do you go from a step further of just like, hey, on a video call and waving to actually feel as if you're being there together? I have a short video in here that I don't know if it's going to work. I'm going to try it. If it doesn't work, let me know. I can talk through it instead. But we
can certainly try. We've got Hank in the background, and he's great with this sort of thing. So just give it a shot and see what happens. Oh, there's no sound. I don't think we.
All right. I did send the video. If you guys have it on your end, maybe we can play it after. But
yeah,
in the interest of time, I'll basically just move forward to say that.
What we could try actually is if you stop sharing your screen and share it again, but enable sound. There should be a checkbox saying I want to share sound. That might actually fix the problem that we have.
Let's give it a whirl.
See what happens. It's computer technology. So basically this is turning it off and on again, but different.
It's kind of like kicking it, right?
Yeah, sort of.
If in doubt. All right, it's not giving me an option.
Oh, it's not working. Okay, let's move on then. We'll make sure that we share a video afterwards. That works too.
All right, no worries. Are you guys seeing my slide share again?
Yes. Yeah, okay. That's working.
Perfect. So I'll give the very short, it's a short video that is just a teaser of a product that my team is building right now. I should clarify, prototype that my team is building right now, not product. We don't build product. But it is in the AR VR space, and it's really focused on that concept of how do you be there with another colleague. This is an early concept drawing, gives you basically an idea of what it is, but I won't go into too much more depth. So moving beyond how we work together, we're changing with whom we work. And this, I think, is an interesting concept too. It's going to the whole definition of what my team does. We are a collaboration group. Historically, collaboration has meant the act of working with someone to produce or create something. And that concept is really evolving over time. We're no longer thinking of how do I work with someone, but how do I work with something, a machine, a bot, a device. And that's a very different way to look at collaboration. We're no longer looking at it as this purely human-to-human collaboration, but human to machine, human to AI, human to technology interaction. And how do you fit that all together in a way that doesn't feel clunky? And that's a big thing that we need to solve. But it's very interesting and very exciting as well. With that, some of my predictions of what I think evolution of AI communications will look like. We still may be quite a ways off from having artificial intelligence with this high emotional intelligence, strong perception. However, I think as we progressed already from very simplistic models, things like chatbots, to more sophisticated models that can encompass natural language processing and are conversational, my prediction is that we'll begin to layer on contextual awareness to that. And eventually we will get to some element of social awareness and some concept of social intelligence. We'll see this evolution beyond this conversational AI to layering in all this contextual awareness and basic social cues. And that does get us a step further to ultimately achieving this element of social intelligence. I also think we're going to see a greater depth of social dynamics in our software. So not just these binary conversations, but the ability to drift in and out of conversations online the same way as you could in person. As we build out this complexity of the virtual interactions, this will start to become possible. And I'm hoping we can talk about this some in the chat after, because this is a really interesting area, I think. So as far as the future of collaboration, I'm going to wrap up here. It's a very exciting field to be working in. There's so much opportunity on the horizon. Within my team, we're asking questions like, what if I could have real life interactions that are better than what's currently possible in real life? What if conferencing doesn't have to be limited to this two-dimensional plane? What happens when real and virtual are no longer distinct ideas and they start blending together? What happens when artificial intelligence begins to have this concept of emotional and social intelligence? What are those communications and interactions like? And that is really, really, really exciting to me. So just to wrap up my thoughts here, humans are unique. We value meaning, trust, experience. Technology is built for humans, and as much as we can remember that, keep it to the forefront of everything we build. We use technology to expedite or enhance these human connections. It's an extension of our humanity. And technology will be successfully adopted, I think, when it adheres to those values, when it expedites our connection, when it enhances our relationship. That's when you ultimately see adoption. So I hope you've enjoyed this talk. I've definitely enjoyed sharing it. Feel free to reach out to me, and that's all I have for today.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. It's an interesting talk, seeing this perspective in the field of AI, where we spend an awful lot of time talking about neural networks and amazing technological advances in that field. It's good to remember that AI is actually here to enhance humans rather than replace them. I find that personally really important, but it's good to see that more and more companies like Cisco are working on this actually. And we actually have got a question from somebody in the audience in regards to that. So let me find that real quick.
So I do have to say, while you're looking for that if I can find an empathetic enough chatbot, I will be calling into that customer service line every day. And
right?
They can empathize with me about my day and about my sorrow, about my finances or whatever is going on, or my lack of trees. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So Boris is asking, when using technology, we currently use a lot of screens, as you mentioned. When talking about video conferencing, we're using our screen to see each other. We're using a webcam to connect. Do you see a large role for screens and cameras in the future, or do you think that we're moving back away from that when we talk about collaborative software?
My personal opinion on this is there will still be a large role for cameras and screens, but the same way we're redefining what collaboration is, we're going to redefine what a screen is. Does a screen mean a piece of glass? It may. It may just mean a piece of glass that's changed size and changed location and has more flexibility, or a screen may be, I put on my AR goggles and there's my screen. It may be projection. It may be something projected onto my retina. There are a lot of options of how you can describe a screen. Cameras are more interesting because the whole ability to capture, we haven't figured out any way to do that without cameras and a lot of cameras. And how do you make that not be obtrusive? And that's actually the little teaser thing I was trying to show there. That's something that my team's been working on, is how do you enable these two-way interactions that are live and in real time and not make it feel like you have a wall of cameras in front of you. And that's something we think we've solved, but that's very challenging. So I don't think they're going away, but I think we're going to redefine what they mean.
Yeah, exactly. And in adding to that, I saw another question from someone in the audience mentioning that now that we can use AI in computer vision and AI in voice generation, actually, we can actually enhance what we see. We can we've seen all the negative samples with deep fakes, with the president saying something else. What do you think? Are we going to see more stuff in the future that actually uses AI to enhance the interaction that we have as humans?
Most likely. We're already seeing that in our meetings today. We have things, I mean, do our product plug. We have WebEx Assist, which is something that we've added to our WebEx meetings. It's basically an AI running in the back of your meetings that's helping you take notes, follow-up meeting, that kind of a thing. So I think you see a lot of that in the background, you'll see. And you're starting to see that, I think, in all of our tools. You're also seeing, Snapchat filters and things like that. How do I enhance the way I look? The visual there of, and that's become, as more and more people are on video, that has become very important as well. I think that's going to be very different for the different use cases. But we use augmented reality as a buzzword all the time here. But if you really think about what does augmented reality mean, then it's reality that you have augmented, you have improved it in some way by overlaying something on top of it. And I think we are absolutely seeing that today in a lot of ways. And I think the future will definitely see more of that.
Yeah, sort of the advanced Snapchat filters where you can say, well, I'd like to make my face a little bit more suntanned, just to give the illusion that I had a great vacation. Those sort of things I think we'll be seeing soon in the future. Given that we've seen so many Snapchat filters with mustaches and dog's ears and those kind of things. Those are funny, but I personally feel that we'll soon see a generation of video filters that are capable of doing much more than that, actually.
Yeah, I think beyond just things that are aesthetically pleasing, the things that will be useful in an interaction. Like it would be great to have, well, and we're talking, you can go back to our conversation we had on Monday, and I have this little field I can see in my view of like, oh yeah, we chatted about this, and you mentioned this about your kids, and like a reminder of our last conversation. It's enhancing our current interaction by replacing my poor memory with AI memory that remembers much better than I do. That type of interaction, you see how that can be phenomenally useful in meetings, in enterprises, in medical settings, in a host of different industries and verticals.
Yeah. That sounds really interesting. There's loads more questions coming in. So Boaz has another question, which is also interesting. So we've talked about computer vision in this case, how we use AI to enhance basically our meetings. How about haptic sensors? Maybe if we combine that with computer vision, that should be fun.
So we've played around some with haptics personally, and the technology hasn't advanced quite as quickly in the haptic space as I would like to see. And I think a lot less over the last year because COVID-19 didn't do haptics any favor. It's something that if the technology was already there, this would be a great time to use it. But when you're at a point in the technology where you need more people hands-on testing it, it's really hard to do that in the current environment. So I feel like haptics is almost stalled a bit in that regard. But that's absolutely something I think we're going to see in the future is adding in the other senses. Right now, so much is focused on audio and video. That's how do we make those better? How do we augment those? How do we, improve those? But we have other senses. We have multiple senses. How do we layer in all those other things? And there's some really great haptics companies out there that really focus on think of yourself in a physical world without the ability to touch. How would you function? Like if it's so important in your physical, why isn't that just as important in your virtual interactions? And that's a pretty logical argument. So I think adding haptics in the future will definitely be something we'll see, but I think it's going to be a lot longer on the time horizon just because of where we're at with the technology.
Yeah. So so there's the answer, Boaz. It's a long way from home, but I mean, who knows what could happen next year once we get out of the pandemic and people start thinking of new ways of interacting again. We're in the pandemic. I've seen some developments around spatial analysis, for example, which is also a computer vision application, where the pandemic basically forced us to think about new ways of applying AI in this field. So that's pretty interesting. So talking about the social aspects of those micro interactions, how does that work out currently in computer vision, in your opinion?
So I'm going to have an overly biased opinion here because of the technology that we're building. We're building something that is focus on photorealistic holograms. So I believe that that is the future. That is why I don't think avatar adoption will be huge overall in the long term, because you lose those things. Having this sort of blanket, yes, I'm seeing my cartoonish version of me raise its eyebrows, like that helps to get gross expression across, but so much of human interaction is around these very fine-tuned micro expressions, and you simply can't do that if you don't have photorealistic quality in real time that you're seeing how another person is reacting. So that's my personal opinion on that one.
I guess it's a huge challenge to get that working with neural networks. I've got some experience myself, and I know that it takes an awful long time to train a neural network to even recognize the eyebrows on a person, let alone those micro interactions of slightly raising your eyebrow when you're not agreeing with something.
Yeah.
What does the challenge look like for you?
5 years.
That's a long
Looks like
time.
a lot of work. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just thinking of the project we've been working on. We've been working on it for 5 years to get to a point where it's like, all right, we're getting there.
And it's not even ready yet. You're getting there, so there's still a ways to go. What do you think? Do we get this sort of stuff in 5 years, 10 years? What's sort of the prediction here?
I think you'll start seeing some pretty awesome stuff in the next 2 years, quite frankly.
Wow.
But if you want to see, everyone goes to this, I want Minority Report, I want these kind of crazy interactions. Like, we're not quite at that point where you're going to have these huge grandiose scales and you don't need anything other than a little chip or contact lens you put in your eye. Like, that's still going to be a ways away. It'd be interesting to see what advancements we see in eyewear. Right now, I mean, if you want to get to these mixed reality type scenarios, it's basically HoloLens or Magic Leap, or basically the two out there that can do these really complex interactions. But they're both, it's a heavy thing. It's you're wearing something. So until we get to something closer to what you're wearing, a set of eyeglasses that feels very lightweight and it's not intrusive, I think there's a lot of limitations of what people are going to be willing to put up with. So I think you can see stuff in the very short term, I think, in enterprise settings, in certain verticals where, hey, I can put on a headset for a short period of time. But if you want to see mass adoption, it's going to depend a lot on the form factor.
Yeah, I mean, and that one's pretty large still. Stefano talked about this earlier in the episode where he mentioned that the battery life of a HoloLens is pretty short, and its weight is huge compared to normal glasses that Alicia is wearing currently, but I'm wearing my glasses normally. I don't put them on stream because that's horrible to look at. I've got those blue filters in there that's strange to look at. So Alicia, would you actually wear such a pair of glasses if it would have a small camera inside and allows you to communicate to people?
So, I've been thinking about it, and they have the face masks, which are a little bigger, right? So if you could get one of those just a little bit heavier, because people use those all over the place, and you can see expression through the screen, and it's still protective, right? And people are okay with that. So I think if they could get it down to that size, and it looks like we're seeing the hardware improvements, right? And hardware improvements really drive a lot of these efficiencies sometimes, which enable us to do these calculations at a quicker pace. So it sounds like maybe there's an opportunity for collaboration, right? So get some of these AI chips, right?
Yeah, I guess the biggest challenge that we have currently with computer vision applications is that the smaller we make this form factor to put the models in and the other software that we need, the more power constrained we become and the more compute power constrained we become. So it's more of a matter of balancing the affordance of the technology we're using versus the power that it offers us. So if it's a heavier device, we get more compute power, but it's also harder to use. So finding the sweet spot. I don't think we will ever wear a lens in our eye that basically projects images on our eye whenever it wants to, because sometimes you just got to get away from computers. And that's even the case for me as a total deep learning geek. That's important to still do. It can be very overbearing, all this technology.
You don't look forward to being plugged into the matrix.
No. So going
I
back
have
to
many friends who did not change any of their habits once COVID and quarantine started. So many work from home friends.
Yeah, I guess we're lucky as IT people that we do already a lot of stuff from home and remote, so we're sort of used to this extra cognitive load.
Yeah. So I'm just grateful that humanity still reaches out for interpersonal interaction. Like I see people in my community taking walks and having conversations with each other 6 feet away, and I think regardless of the technology, I don't think we're going to get to a point where we're stuck in our homes plugged in all the time, because I think we're still always going to need that physical touch, right? Sorry, I'm a hugger. I need my hugs. I need to interact with people and hit my hug quota.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the challenges that we have with technology, I guess. So one of the worries that I have is when you use a computer, it's a decidedly different form of interaction. So it places a cognitive load on you. Is there any work that you know of, Elizabeth, that people are working on to reduce cognitive load of using tools like Cisco WebEx, maybe other conferencing tools?
Yeah, there's a lot of all of the technology companies have right now have ML and AI groups that are looking at, can we make this less painful? I don't know, that's maybe not the best word, but yeah, as people are using things longer and longer, there's definitely a lot of teams that are looking at that. I don't know of any amazing breakthroughs that have happened in that space. I do know there's lots and lots of work and exploration, but I would say that's not nearly as far along as some of the stuff we've been talking about in computer vision.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the questions from the audience. There's a bunch more stuff going in. So one of the other things that I'm wondering about, how do we make sure that this technology is inclusive, for example, for people who can't see? We're talking about computer vision, so it's visual, and then I can't see. What happens next?
Yeah, that's why I think adding the other senses is going to be really important. There's been a lot more focus recently in some of the things I've seen, just over the last few months, actually, where we're adding in alternate cues of, I'm doing something, say I'm wearing a headset, an AR headset or a VR headset, and I want to might have limited ability. Maybe the individual's colorblind, or maybe there's some sort of physical impairment there that they might not be able to see the full depth of certain things. The other thing that's been interesting in realizing what percentage of the population actually cannot see 3D using a stereoscopic headset. It's a double-digit percentage, so that's a large factor as well. But there's been a lot I've seen, like I said, just in the last few months, of adding in, well, maybe I add an audio cue when someone is doing this, or maybe I add in some sort of haptic feedback, depending on what kind of a rigor setup you have, so that it might supplement the visual. It's still very visual heavy. I have seen a few cases where they've had some sort of virtual meeting, and the focus was primarily on audio, and then visual was like an add-on. So like if you have the ability to see as well, but it was really focused on the audio and all the dimensionality of that, of having the music and the cues and the prompts. And I think you're seeing more of that, but you see the same technology curve for everything. First, it's figuring out, how do we make, is this technologically feasible? Can we make something that does this? And then once we do that, it's like, how do we make it better, faster, cheaper, smaller? And then in that process of better, faster, cheaper, smaller, it's also, how do I widen the usage for it? And I think a lot of this technology, it's still early in that curve, so you're only seeing that inclusiveness in certain areas as they're sort of cresting that curve there. So I wouldn't say it's even across the board, but there's definitely been a much bigger focus on it probably since March, because more and more people are using it. As you can notice, the timeline relates very closely to what's going on in the world, because those issues have been raised. So the acceleration of adding in that alternate usage and inclusivity, I think, is happening much more rapidly than it would normally, which is maybe a silver lining to the current world situation.
Yeah, we've seen this across the board for AI. Actually, last week we had a discussion with Richard Campbell. He's a famous guy. He records a lot of podcasts on the internet. He's well known in the Microsoft community as well. He actually showed us the history of AI last week, and we had this discussion where we saw that in the 80s we had compute problems. We couldn't possibly train a neural network. That was too slow. But nowadays we can easily train a neural network. We're training neural networks with 1.5 billion parameters. That's like, I can't do that on my machine. It doesn't fit. What we've seen is that just now we're starting to learn that AI is actually something that's pretty dangerous, and we should spend more time thinking about, yes, we can do that, but why are we doing this? Is this the best option we can offer to a user? Is it inclusive? Is it fair to everybody? Is this something that Cisco is aware of, and are you spending a lot of time on that?
I would say there is a group of people that is spending a lot of time on that. It's a little bit, at least for us, it's a little bit of, there is a group of people focused on those particular issues and problems rather than it necessarily being ingrained in everything. I think at some point you will see that translate more broadly, and people will be factoring that in from the get-go. But again, I think it's just where we are in the curve. It's more now, it's figuring out how do we do that? And then once we figure out the how, then we have the systems in place that we can roll that out more broadly, but we're still working on the how.
Well, it sounds really interesting because I'm speaking to a lot of companies about AI, and I don't know about you, Alicia, but I haven't heard a lot of talk about model fairness or making computer vision solutions compatible for people who can't see. How's that in your work?
Sorry, who was that question directed at?
Sorry, Alicia.
I think I echo the sentiment that a lot of people are still talking about how, and it's really the people who are the architects that ask why, and when you start looking at GDPR and where data gets placed and data restrictions and the different privacy concerns, and I think a lot of the rules and the governing restrictions of the different countries drives a lot of these conversations, but they're just so relevant that when you're building these systems, you really need to start asking those questions up front nowadays, and just with the court cases that came out this year, it's quite impactful to deploy a commercial solution that isn't kind of in the public's best interest, and people find out about it, and there aren't as many rules out there that there should be. But I think that we're seeing that the response time is very, very quick to rectify that. So I think that the more we start using these systems, the more these situations come up, and the more opportunities we have to have those discussions and to make that change. So definitely at the builder level, and but I think everybody starts at the code and gets excited and think about all the things I can do with this, and then after that it's but should I be doing it, right?
Cool. So the whole ethical aspect, there's not a lot of legislation, as you mentioned, Alicia. So Elizabeth, what do you think of initiatives around bringing in legislation around the use of AI?
Well, I think we learned from Terminator. We don't want to wait until after we build Skynet to then decide, should we build Skynet? So I think it's something that you do, it's a unique area because I think it's something you do need to look at the legislation in the process of building it. And a lot of times legislation is an not necessarily an afterthought, but something you do after the fact. You do build the technology first, and then you look at how and where and why should we use it. AI is unique in that, and I feel like you are seeing that now, in that there are more and more court cases around AI, even though the technology is still quite nascent. And I think it is necessary because of the nature of what is capable with AI that you do need to be building your legislation along with building the technology.
Yeah, that's pretty unique for to AI. Would you say that we are right on time with legislation around AI?
All right. Do I want to answer that in the grounds of my
Feel free not to answer that. Or I'm wondering because I personally feel that so when I teach AI to young students, they already know that AI is in Spotify, in their Snapchat, in their Instagram, in their Facebook, if they use that at all anymore. It's everywhere, and since it's everywhere, I would actually argue that it might be a little bit on the late side. We might have to fix some of the damage that we've caused already with all the amazing, cool code that we wrote.
I won't argue with you.
Cool. Let's keep it at that then. Yeah, that sounds like an awesome idea. So there's one last question that I would like to ask. Someone asks, yesterday I was at a hacking conference, an AI hacking conference. How will you relate AI to hacking in this case? What are you going to do against that, for example?
Why do anything against it? Yeah. Do you mean on the security side?
Well,
like when it comes to on the creation side, why would you do anything against it? I mean, the creation is creation. It's great whether it comes from a human or an AI. Like let's get as much as we can. On the security side, I mean, I know our security division is humming like nuts these days. There's so much to be looking at and so much to be exploring. And as you start getting into these really creative things like how do you detect and block deepfakes? There's so many different things that we need to do to ensure that we're the communications and collaborations team. How do we ensure that our communications and collaborations are effectively reacting to every security threat? AI is interesting in that it's throwing lots of security threats out there all at once. So from that perspective, I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's something that we need to be focused on. And I know our group is, and I know other major technology companies are as well. Like if you just read the headlines for the last few months, security.
Yeah, it's been pretty important. And we've seen actually a lot of samples where hackers attempted to fool a neural network that was using computer vision by just injecting some noise in there. So that seems pretty interesting to actually, on one side, try it out once. I guess you need to do it once to discover what it's like and what you can do against it. And on the other hand, what are we going to do against that? And do we need to worry at all about those kind of attacks when we talk about collaboration or maybe other solutions in that field?
Yeah, on the security side, absolutely. And if I were in the product organization, this would probably be the number one thing that kept me up at night. But thankfully, for my own sanity, I'm not in the product organization. I'm a prototype organization. So our view of this is much more on the not how do we make this safe for everyone, how do we protect our tools against it. It's much more on the cool, what could we do here? And so it's more of the experimentation. How do we break something? Like let's try 25 different ways to break it and see what we could do. And let's also like, hey, have you tried, anytime we do something like, have you tried, like we have our resident AI experts, like throw him in there, see what he can do, and like, see if he can come up with a different answer. So on the creation experimentation side, I think it's phenomenal because you can find some really interesting things that I think as humans, we would have a harder time making that mental leap. But then you see, let me interject some AI. Oh, this is way. Oh yeah, that's what AI would do in that scenario. That's not what I would have thought of, but that's pretty cool. And it helps you learn much quicker.
Yeah, that sounds cool. So actually, now that I come to think of it, your job is actually at the beginning of the curve, trying to explore what's possible, and the other departments, such as legal and security and the product departments, are actually working out, is this actually an idea that's safe to bring on the market? Is that correct?
We have to do the really hard jobs. We just have to have all the fun. I hope my management chain doesn't watch this.
Sounds like an awesome job. Well, thank you very much for talking to us. I'm actually quite happy with the talk, because I never actually spend a lot of time thinking about those micro interactions. I'm all about the code and worrying about how do I make this neural network work correctly. So that sounds cool. Well, Alicia, do you have anything to add to that? I mean,
no, you're one of my heroes now. So I definitely enjoyed the talk, and thank you for speaking with us today.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, and I'll
please do
keep an
come
eye out
back.
for my robot dog.
We'll see what we can do by Christmas.
Very, very cool. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
By that, we're at the end of this show, and I would like to thank all the speakers that have joined us today. They went out of their way to put together slides, talk to us about their ideas, and I personally had a lot of meetings setting this up, so I'm quite happy that this came out. Thank you, Alicia, for joining me as a co-host. And we still need to talk about that dog. I'm not sure if I want to get the mechanical one, I guess.
No, this one's cuter, and it's all right that he snores. It's not every night. It's just, the days I give him bacon, I think.
Oh, huh.
It's probably self-imposed. Like,
I think so, yeah.
I will start recording the days that I give him bacon and seeing if there's a direct correlation. But I'm pretty sure it's related to his level of happiness. So, but I do have a lot of trees in my backyard as well. So
I do have a beach as well.
No, I don't have a beach.
Oh, might be time to build one, I guess.
But would that make him happier where he would snore more? So does that help my situation with the snoring puppy?
I don't think so. So we'll save that for later. We will have a chat about this robotic puppy later on.
So the Advanced AI session is on October 29th. So we will be answering deep questions then.
Yes. So that's a good point, actually. So we have another episode coming up next week about natural language processing. We've got some awesome researchers who are working on tools like Spacey, a popular Python framework for analyzing language. We've got people working on large neural networks that identify text and generate text. So that's pretty cool. We've got some awesome stuff coming up, deep stuff even. I guess some of the sessions today were a little bit more basic, but expect more deep stuff next week. And the week after that, we've got all the advanced AI stuff like multi-agent systems, reinforcement learning, those kind of crazy concepts that might not be useful in production immediately, but are really interesting to watch. So thank you very much. And for people who are still wanting to tweet to us with their pictures for the Oculus Quest 2.
You have 1 more hour.
Yes. Show the box. Ta-da! So you can win this, actually, if you send us your best photo of watching us talk live about AI. If you're not a photo person, your camera is shy or your camera doesn't work, that can happen too. Feel free to tweet us your questions. You can ask your final question right now. We will hold for a second or two. And after that, we will choose a winner in the next couple of hours, and we will contact you personally if you've won. So thank you very much, everyone. And looking forward to next week.
Thank you.
See you later.
Be well, everyone.
Yeah, stay safe.